together for Tuesday, August 30th. This one's called a special meeting. We'll go back to regular meetings next week. Can I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Blakemore? Here. Trustee Corvalon?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol?
Here.
And just a note for the record that Trustee Coombs Ismail is absent as of now, but we are expecting him to attend this evening.
And I do just want to, because we have new people who've jumped on online. Unfortunately, we're having camera issues here in the community center room, so we won't be able to show video tonight.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to consent agenda. There was a couple of, before we approve the consent agenda, I had a question on the August 30th warrants. Miranda, I saw $40,000 in street funds. That was a whopper. Was that predominantly from Black Forest?
It was not. It was from School Road. Those would be, and so there were a series of different charges that hit various invoices.
Right.
Emmett, do you want to speak to the cost of that project?
Hi, Emmett. We haven't met before.
Emmett here.
Yeah, my name's Emmett Pelletier. I manage the streets department. Yeah, as far as the large funds, that was pertaining to a paving project on School Road. Mm-hmm. The asphalt was just in a deteriorating state, and so we took it upon ourselves to repave the road.
It looks great. I walked it this afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, it's 0.4 of a mile of fresh asphalt, and yeah, the cost pertains to the asphalt itself and also the trucking. Those are the largest expenses.
We had to lay it down pretty thick, it looked like, in places.
Yeah, it was 2 to 3 inches thick, mm-hmm. But it did have to be thicker in spots just to cover up the imperfections that existed in the road to begin with.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what it was. I'm pretty happy with the end result.
Well done. Yeah, it looks great.
And I just want to offer clarification from budget. So we did budget for this as a capital improvement project under infrastructure improvements under the streets fund. That did not have enough money in it though. So Emmett did split the costs amongst a series of different line items. So asphalt, infrastructure improvement, road base, and there was one other one because the project ended up being slightly over $50,000 for that. And that's how much it cost to do that stretch that he did.
Yeah, the last one, I think we had some Martin Marietta expenses in there for asphalt. Okay, so that's been dealt with. Do I hear an echo? There we go. Okay, on the August 16th, Karen, I don't know if you're going to talk about it tonight, but it mentions in those minutes you were going to talk with the dispensaries. Did you get a chance to do those visits?
Oh, I did. Well, do you want me to talk about now? Okay, so I reached out to the 4 marijuana dispensaries that we have, but I was only able to, I only heard back from one person, and that was Harvest House. Mm-hmm. And what the manager there had to say was that their revenue is down 25 to 30% over last year. And it's a competitive market. Mm-hmm. But he said if it's a matter of taxing his dispensary or not having a police department, he would choose to tax the dispensary.
Okay, thanks. Everything else I think we've discussed before. So board, any questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I'll second that.
Well, let's see. Can we go to a vote, Macy?
Of course. Mayor Pro Tem Mahol?
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
And Trustee Blakemore?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to section 4, public comments on non-agenda items. Paul Carell is number one. Paul, are you online or did you want to say something tonight? His letter is in the packet for those that haven't read it.
And I don't see him that he's online.
Okay. Alrighty. Steve, you want to say something? You're on. You are item 4.2. Yep. Come on up. Yeah.
My name is Steve Cepek, and I suppose that I would just like to officially put my bid in case the board does decide to appoint rather than do another special election, which I think getting a full board of trustees is a very important thing at this point, and not going through the process of another election. But in the long run, it's up to the board. I feel that the recent election was very, very close. And I would love to help town get to the successful future that it deserves. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, Steve. Having an even number of trustees makes voting somewhat problematic.
Yeah.
So having run with 4 for a while, I'd dearly love to have more join us. So we'll be talking about it some more. Thanks
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Thanks for running a great campaign. Thanks for the T-shirt.
And no problem. And if anybody has any questions for me, or if anybody would like to schedule some time to sit down, I'm always available. Yeah, you can get my email through town, or I'm over at Tin Shed. So, yeah.
Thanks a bunch.
Yeah.
Congrats on a great campaign. Do we have a Sierra or Caleb on the line right now? Miranda?
No.
Okay,
I have a question about their email
go
that
ahead.
they sent. So I'm wondering, from Miranda or our streets person, if we've talked to those residents and if any, they asked what mitigation measures can the town take to ensure that they don't have the washout onto their property? This is the property on Big Springs, right after the pavement, and before you get to the sharp turn where the buses turn around. And what happened is the road base is washing out into their yard. I don't know if you saw that email or not, Emmett.
Yes, yeah, I did. I'm familiar with that. And we did take measures to control the erosion in the ditch line, and we placed some riprap to try to mitigate the erosion. They're under the impression that paving the remaining unpaved section of Big Springs Drive will alleviate the silt they're experiencing. But I think it's much more than that, and just paving that small section will not alleviate the silt. And it is a historical drainage ditch that runs through their property, and the only solution I see would be to have the ditch completely circumvent their property. So I don't think the solution is as simple as maybe it's been made out to be.
Could you explain where that ditch goes? Does it go under their driveway?
Yeah, so the culvert runs underneath of their driveway, and then it discharges into the fenced area of their property. And at that point, it's out of my hands. All I can do is try to prevent the silt from upstream, but it's a large undertaking, and with the amount of rain we've been seeing, it's just I think it's really just a product of the amount of rain we've been seeing.
I wonder if they undergrounded their ditch, if that would be helpful, if they put a pipe in there under.
I'm
And
not
then-
sure this is Board of Trustee meeting information right now.
Oh, Okay, so
This should
just
be
my
a
last,
private conversation between you and Emmett, I think, via email or any other means. I have issues I have with the town works, public roads, and I don't think this is the venue for it.
well, this was an email from the resident to the Board of Trustees.
I understand, but I'm just saying, there's a lot on the agenda today.
Okay, yeah, so I just have one final question. Have we looped back to them, to the residents to tell them what our thoughts were on it?
Well, I would like a solution before I reach out to them. I have not closed the loop with them yet.
Okay, thanks. Let me know if I can help with it.
It is a tough. I'm the next door neighbor of that property, and I get a lot of the same exact road base and silt. And the road is in fact paved along the length of our property, but it doesn't make a difference. We still get all that road base and silt covering all the landscaping. So yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not sure that there's an obvious solution to that, other than it stopping to rain, which we don't want either.
Oh, hi. Well, this is Tanya. I have property on Doe Trail. I'm getting a ton of silt coming down my road too, and it's because the road's not graded properly and the water is flowing on the side of the hillside versus in the drainage canals on the side of the road. And I think that needs to be addressed first and foremost. If you're going to fix roads, you got to understand where water flows and drain the water to the side of the hillside, put it in culverts. Because I think a lot of people are having this problem, and I think it does need to be addressed. And if this is the time and place for it, I'm happy to address it, because I was going to send photos. There's some serious issues happening in our private property.
Miranda, anything you want to say about this going forward?
No, I mean, obviously, I know Emmett and his team are evaluating these spaces as they go. It's not just Big Springs is just one neighborhood where there are challenges.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a matter of continuing to assess these areas, and we welcome that information. Emmett and I had talked about trying to set up a part on our website where you could report these very specific road complaints, and that way it could be triaged by his whole team and not just wait for Emmett. And so we're working through different ways to communicate, but obviously if people have concerns, they are encouraged to reach out to Emmett, or there's a general contact us on our website page that goes to Peter, and then Peter can forward it on.
Good. Okay. Emmett, what's the next point we should take a look at this again? You think 6 weeks from now, when we move into a different season and the rain slows down?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, it's definitely on my agenda to address these concerns. And yeah, I apologize if there's a perceived lack of service, but it's a large undertaking for my crew consists of me and 2 other people, both of which are new. So it's on my agenda to address these concerns, but it takes time. And with the amount of rain we've been seeing, it's not as simple as it's been made out to be. So that's all I have. It's on my agenda to fix it, and we'll revisit this.
Good. It's a tough neighborhood to keep paved or keep in condition, for sure. Anything else? Do we have any other non-agenda items that require that somebody wants to make public comment on tonight? Going once.
Jesse Sievers has raised his hand.
Jesse Sievers. Floor is yours.
Hi, guys. Yeah, just regarding runoff and erosion and drainage management in the town, that's really where the engineer comes in. And, Emmett needs guidance from our town engineer when we have problem spots where we have excessive erosion in the town. I would like our engineer to go have a look and see what kind of engineered solutions he would suggest for Emmett. There's always simple solutions and more extensive, more expensive ones, but I don't think it's acceptable for runoff to be flowing onto residents' properties from town streets. And Caleb asked me about this as well. I just happened to be at a dinner party with him, and he was mentioning it to me. I'm planning to go up there and have a look tomorrow anyway, just as a professional excavator, and I will report back to the board at our next meeting. But I do think it's I will most likely be tapping Miranda once I go have a look and let her know my thoughts. But as a professional excavator, I can tell you that it's not Emma's job or my job to propose a solution. It's the job of an engineer. An engineer is the one who's trained, qualified, and insured to say how we need to address this erosion problem.
Thank you, citizen Jesse Sivers. You'll be at this table next week. I look
So
forward.
Mayor Pro Tem will two things. First, I just want to note for the public that Trustee Coombs Ismail has arrived. Second, I just wanted to note that this year, the Board of Trustees did set aside funds for a master infrastructure plan specific to streets. And so that's something that Nathan Scalick is working on, and he is town's engineers. And Emmett and Nathan did a drive around town to identify these spots. We expect to have that MIP to us and for the board to review hopefully in the next month or two. And I do anticipate, Jesse, that a lot of the things you just spoke to will see an engineer's recommendations, but of course it's going to turn to the board to fund those recommendations. So it's something to consider as we head into the 2023 budget is we will need to invest in the streets department to make sure they have the resources they need to be able to do the work.
Good. You had your hand up, Billy. Okay. You were stretching? Okay. Okay, any other
public comment?
Yeah, go right ahead, Ron.
My next door neighbor to 100 East First Street has complained that my parking lot is flooding his garage. And if you're going to have an engineer study this, I would like to have this problem included as I have a survey, a topographical survey that shows the water's running onto the gentleman's property from the street, not from my property. And this is the second time I've gone through this. Town staff is aware of it, but I would like a resolution to this problem, particularly in that it's not my fault that water runs downhill. Thank you.
Ron, do something about that. Gravity. Thanks for your comments. Anybody else that's online that wants to speak? Hearing none? Miranda, are you seeing anything?
No.
Okay. Then that concludes public comment on non-agenda items. We'll move on to informational items. August is National Civility Month. Miranda, can you set the stage?
I was actually going to let Trustee Blakemore because she brought this to our attention, and so I'd love to turn it over to her.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I think our working agreements refer to civility, and those are on the clipboard. And, you know, there are things like listening for understanding, being open to all ideas, disagree respectfully. But then I read this information from the Department of Legal Affairs of Colorado, and I thought it presented like a different perspective on civility. And so I'm just going to read it. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said you can disagree without being disagreeable. President George W. Bush said civility is not a tactic or a sentiment. It is a determined choice of trust over cynicism, of community over chaos. August is National Civility Month, and the National Civility Association notes that many local communities feel as if they are unraveling. Unkind, uncivil, and disrespectful behavior is tearing away at the social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health fabric of our schools, businesses, and homes. The price of being incivil is very high in the workplace, public discourse, and our personal lives. It seems that way too many of us often display a lack of cooperation or even simple common courtesy. So this month, they're just asking us to remind ourselves to treat customers, coworkers, family, neighbors, and others with courtesy, compassion, and respect. And then what is the meaning of treating others with civility? It is to be civil in your public discourse and behavior. Be respectful of others whether or not you agree with them. It is to stand against incivility when you see it. So we just have today and tomorrow of August, but I hope we can continue to think about how we interact our public discourse and trying to be civil. Thank you.
And thanks, since we're getting such a late start, let's extend it to September.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any other comments?
But then it can stop, right?
Yeah, then it can stop.
All right.
Okay, yeah, October it's done. Okay, so there's no other informational items that we need to know about tonight that I see on the agenda, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Then we move into item 6, discussion items. For each discussion item, the public can comment. That's limited to 3 minutes, as it has been in prior sections. The first one we're going to cover is 6.1, support for the extension of the Boulder County transportation tax. Is this something you wanted to address? Great.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Mahold. This is Karen Blakemore, Trustee Blakemore again. Claire Levy reached out to Nederland and other towns and cities within Boulder County seeking support for the extension of the Boulder County transportation sales tax, which has been in place for a number of years. It is just 0.1%, and that's a penny on a $10 purchase. Now, if the trustees agree to support this sales tax, then our town logo will be included on materials to take to the different community events.
It looks like the main things that flow to us are work on the Eldora Road, the EcoPass program. What are the other main benefits for the town?
Oh, right. I will get into that. So the Boulder County Commissioners approved their first ever mobility and access for all ages and abilities plan, and that addresses transportation needs of older adults, people with disabilities, low income, and youth. And so the transportation sales tax will be used to help start implementation of that plan. Now, currently the benefit that we're seeing from Boulder County transportation are the Nederland RTD EcoPass, which is governed by Boulder County Commissioners. And so they provide a liaison. They manage and administer that program. The Hesse Shuttle and the free NB route on summer weekends, which reduces congestion in the Nederland area. And they also manage the Boulder County Subregional Forum, which provides grants from the Denver Regional Council of Governments Transportation Improvement Program. Currently, we have one project funded through Dr. Cog Tip, and that is the Nederland Visitor Center Transportation Improvements. And we also have an application outstanding for the Nederland Multimodal Transportation Plan. And then I want to go to the attachments. The first attachment is an infographic showing the transportation funding for the county. And we can see the sales tax has been in place for 20 years. And it's used to fund 5 different areas: transportation service and programs, roadway safety and resilience, community mobility programs, regional corridors, regional trails and commuter bikeways. And then the next page shows how the money will be spent. There's a pie chart on the upper left-hand side. 55% of the funds will be used for roadway safety and resilience. And then we also see the 4 other programs being funded at a lesser amount. One great side effect is from the transportation plan is it reduces overall emissions and improves the air quality. The multi-use paths and transit service provide the most benefit to the environment, and the other areas provide a lesser amount. The other thing that it does is it provides funds to leverage grants. And so Boulder County has a plan to take that $121 million of sales tax funding from 15 years and to acquire $269 million of grants from that. Now, what if it doesn't pass? If it doesn't pass, Boulder County will lack the dedicated funding for transportation system improvements and seed money to bring outside funding to our community. Then I want to go to the appendix for the ordinance, and it shows all the different projects that are planned for the transportation sales tax, and I've highlighted the Nederland ones. So this is Exhibit A, and it's on page 40, starts on page 40 of the packet. There are three things that will benefit Nederland: the Eldor Ski Road reconstruction, County Road 130 trail from Nederland town boundary to Nederland High School, and the Mountain Area on-demand transit service. So what I'm asking the trustees is just for a nod of 4 that we want to support the transportation plan or transportation sales tax.
There's a color 119 bus rapid transit commuter bikeway. Is that our section of 119 or another section?
Colorado 119,
16.
item 16.
I believe it's a different part.
Oh, item 16, Colorado 119.
From Boulder to Longmont.
Bus rapid
Yeah.
transit and commuter bikeway. And Eric's correct on that. Thank you, Eric.
Regardless of CDOT coming through of the highway through town this fall, right?
I don't know if it will start this fall. So we're currently in discussions about Highway 119 and doing some work on the road itself, as well as building out the sidewalks. But I believe that's a project slotted for next year. Do you remember?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. This is Tanya.
Tanya, the question was is
Your mic.
CDOT coming through this fall to do work? And CDOT is coming through, but it's not slotted until next year to do work on Highway 119, both the road construction as well as sidewalks.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
So Karen, did you want to make a motion?
Well, so
Okay.
I mean, this, I've made my frustrations with this program clear to Boulder County commissioners, to other officials in other municipalities within Boulder County, and probably to this board on numerous occasions. I'm very frustrated with the way that these funds get allocated. They did not serve the town of Nederland very well, considering that we are a hub for 10,000 people in Western Boulder County. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we are so poorly served by this transportation tax. I am generally for it. Like as a Boulder County resident, I'm for it, but as a Nederland resident, I'm very frustrated by it. And I think that we need to continue pressuring the county to cut, because for instance, that 130 trail to the high school, that's funded in the previous version of the sales tax, right? That can't be counted in this version of the sales tax, right? That was already supposed to be done and it's still not done. And that was the only Nederland area project that was actually accomplished in that sales tax. The EcoPass program is not funded through that sales tax, right? Like Boulder County transportation in general is not funded through the sales tax. Certain projects are, and it's a slate of projects that they've listed. And most of those projects don't apply to Nederland. There is the ones that Trustee Blakemore have mentioned, and they are good, and they should be funded. And I do think we should support the sales tax, but I don't think that means that we should be generally in support of the way that the funds have been allocated, because I don't think that they have been appropriately allocated for the needs of our particular community and the 10,000 residents that we serve in Boulder County.
Agreed.
So-
Go ahead.
This is Tanya, and I want to say I agree with you, Eric. that sidewalk, for God's sake, should have been built. Those kids are walking on the street. But I will also tell you this, that because I was on the EcoPass board for my first 2 years as trustee, and there was some discussion about the thin ice the NB route was on. It was on the chopping block, and it could happen again.
Yep.
So in a way, we should be grateful for what we have, which is a bus route.
Yeah.
And
But it isn't funded
can
with
be
this sales
taken
tax.
away. It's not related at all.
Like the funding that this sales tax generates, as far as I understand it, does not contribute to that EcoPass
So
funding.
can I,
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification.
so,
Being civil, yes, it's
Yeah.
your turn.
thank you. So there is funds that Boulder County Transportation provides to
Right.
manage our EcoPass
Yes.
program. And they have a person who spends time writing the agendas and the minutes and organizing the meetings and putting together the budget slides and all that. And the other thing I wanted to say about CR 130 is that the design was done as part of the previous sales tax. So I hear what you're saying, and if I can help at all with facilitating transportation programs and working with Boulder County to receive support, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I think if the consortium of cities has a meeting that is centered around transportation, and at some point I might propose that, and hopefully that will get done, then I will certainly be asking if you can attend, Trustee Blakemore, and give them a better kind of lay of the land on what it is that we require. Because as I have mentioned multiple times, right, when Boulder County Transportation presents to the town of Nederland on their slides, they cover the town of Nederland with their infographics, right? Like they do not take our town seriously in the way that they even present the projects that this transportation tax funds. So to me, it's a sore point for me. It's very frustrating.
I'm just going to make one other point, and that is that when we travel outside of town too. We
Yes,
go to
of course.
Boulder, we go to Denver, Lafayette, Longmont, Lyons. And so the interconnectivity of these municipalities is something that is beneficial to us.
And that's why, like I said, as a Boulder County resident, I support this, right? But as a Nederland area resident, I'm frustrated by the lack of projects that are dedicated to our community compared to those that are dedicated to other communities.
Good. Two questions for you on this one, Karen. Number one, who's the go-to commissioner that's looking after this specifically? And number two, this is 390 million over 15 years. Is this locking in the spending priority over 15 years, or can that change over time if we step up the lobbying effort?
It can change over time, and the total 121 million of county sales tax funding is not specifically allocated at this time. There's a little bit of buffer. And your other question was?
Who is there a go-to commissioner out of the three for this particular initiative?
Well, Claire Levy is focusing on transportation. However, she is just doing this independently.
Got it.
She can't, as an elected official, be promoting this.
Okay, that's good. Then what did you want to do with this tonight other than? Okay.
Just a nod of 4.
I'll nod for it.
So this isn't a resolution?
No.
Okay.
You can nod.
I nod.
Okay. Good. Tanya, anything to say before we close this one out? Because we can't see a nod. You still there?
Yeah, sorry. I am still here. No, I mean, overall, I'm in support of this program. Eric kind of brought some things in my head now that makes me feel like I should not be, because I'm a little pissed off. You're right. You're saying that last time they brought this to us, they said we were going to have sidewalks to the high school and we still don't have them. I'm mad now. I didn't realize that. So
Well,
I appreciate you telling me that, Eric.
It's less that and more that there is a more general pool of funds that they have allocated in this next round as well, where communities can propose improvements to Boulder County trails or
Well,
other.
I mean, I don't want to divert our
Yeah.
time here, but
Well,
this is
just to-
the song and dance we hear all day long.
Yeah.
Having kids in BVSD,
Yeah.
Boulder gets everything, we get nothing, and it sounds like this is kind of the same situation.
Right. I
Do
think
I
that it's
not wanna
unacceptable
fund
that that
public
isn't done yet.
transportation? No, of course I want to fund public transportation, even if it doesn't help me. But I am a little mad. But it's the same old mad I've been having for a long time. But I appreciate that, Eric.
Thanks, Tanya. Anybody else want to say anything before we move on?
So you do need to do public comment because it's a
Okay,
discussion.
is there
item.
anybody that wants to give, Kayla does? Come on up.
Kayla Evans, 1250 Eldora Road. As far as the extending the sidewalk up to sidewalk up to the school, that is part of the project that I've been working on with Bobcat Ridge. It's always been in the works. It's very problematic. I've walked that property 10,000 times with Karen, with other. The problem is how to do it in a way that is safe, that is not going to be in snow, and when they plow, are you just going to fill whatever sidewalks? So the design is very important. And one of the things that we had talked about is somehow getting it up off the road and go along the ridge line there, but that would be in property that is owned by the Evans family that is hopefully going to be annexed for affordable housing. It's always been one of the components in that project. So it's not for lack of trying, it's for lack of, it's a piece of a bigger puzzle. There's a lot of Rubik's Cubes moving parts in that, but just to let you know, the participants from our end are very concerned. That's always been on the agenda. And I'm glad to see that other people are getting excited about it and want to see some movement. For me, because I drive that road a lot, obviously, because I live there, I've always said it's not a question of if, it's a question of when some kid is going to get hit on that road, because too many of the kids do walk there, and it's just not acceptable. But the design is going to be problematic. You're in the shade, you're in the snow, you're in the whatever, icy. How do you do that with traffic? Because as you all know, the traffic around that corner is a little crazy too. So design will be key. We will want to work very closely with you instead of just, it's not as easy as just laying down a line of cement along the side of the road. There's way more to this component of a sidewalk to make sure that not only the kids going to school, but all the people traversing to the Magnolia bike trails have a safe way of getting there. So, and as you know, there's been a little bit of a parking issue this summer with cars along the side of the road there. So they're going to be parking on the sidewalk or where. So design is crucial. And I look forward to working with the town on a larger project, Eric, that I'm looking at you, and and hoping that we come up with something that is right, not just point of least resistance and we shove something in there, but that is right and the best option. So thank you.
Thanks, Kayla.
Kayla, I have a question for you.
Look,
Kayla?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll try and get the design, and would you be willing to walk it with me?
I'd be happy to talk to you. I show you a lot of the.
Walk the trail.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. $10,001, $2,001, what? Do you want to do that whenever you want to? I'm happy.
I think I know where to find you to
Okay.
set up a
Okay.
time and day to do it.
Great.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, it should be noted that Bola County was, I think the proposal from Chris Pelletier was a trail, right? To at least connect it with a trail so that there was a way, even in good weather at least, to get there without walking on the road. It was never intended to be the permanent solution, right? And so in that sense, like, there were plans in the Boulder County Trails transportation sales tax. There were projects that were rapidly developed, that were executed within the time frame, and that were completed. And then there were some projects that were not, and this was one of them. That was just disappointing because it was the only project on this side of the map, and it wasn't completed, right?
I hear you loud and clear, and I'm going to remember that point.
Thanks. Miranda, any other public comment?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay, last call, if anybody wants to say something from the public or from the board. Hearing none, we'll close out 6.1 and move on to 6.2 parking. Jim, do you want to get things started?
Sure. I printed out some hard copies of my slide deck. Does anybody want some?
I've got mine in front of me.
Macy, will you make
I've
that
got
full
it.
screen? Thank you.
My name is Jim Reese. I live at 66 Barker Road in Nederland. I am also on the Planning Commission, and I am the representative from the Planning Commission Subcommittee on Parking that is here tonight to briefly go over what we have covered before with you. I think all the commissioners have seen this plan at least once. This was compiled. Nothing, I want to emphasize, nothing I'm presenting or talking about is new. Everything has been compiled from previous parking studies, 2009 parking study. I got a lot of information from a parking study put together by Trustee Corvalin and former Trustee Danforth and the parking survey. Our subcommittee consists of myself, Linda Glasser, Miranda Fisher, and Cynthia Blake. Balke, excuse me. And we have, I'm just going to kind of go over this briefly. If you have any questions, just stop me and ask. We have 4 recommendations for the plan for the BOT from the Planning Commission. The 4 were a moratorium on parking in the Central Business District.
Clarify that.
Clarify that?
Yeah, we'll still have parking in the Central Business District. We're not going to have a moratorium on parking, but clarify
the
what
parking
you mean.
fund. I'm sorry.
You got it.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much. The moratorium on the parking fund in the Central Business District. With the exclusion of ADA spots, the 2-year moratorium. This was basically, let me go over the 4 parking, the 4 recommendations first. Develop additional lot parking in town, wayfinding signage and walkability, and to implement paid parking. Those are the 4 recommendations that we came up with after going through all the previous information. I want to say that there's been lots and lots of meetings on this, and basically we tried to focus on simple, implementable, and achievable goals that we could move forward with the BOT that we had control of within our town and could be implemented in the next 12 to 18 months. Okay, so that was the goal. When you start asking me other questions about how the paid parking might happen, we didn't even consider any of that. We'll let you figure out how to skin the cat. We just wanted to come up with basic, implementable goals that you guys could, grab that low-hanging fruit and get something out of discussion and actually implement it in town. So the first one was a moratorium on parking. Basically, it came down to from the parking fund, and feedback I've gotten both from previous boards and residents was that they didn't feel like the parking fund was equally enforced. They felt like that almost universally, anybody who came before the board and asked for a waiver and to be accepted from getting that, received it. Information I have is that there's only one person in the last 10 years who's actually paid in to the parking fund, and we have $10,000, or is that right? $5,000 sitting in there, $2,500 per space that you could buy there. The other thing was that parking in the Central Business District, as you know, there's no more land available to implement this, what we have in the code. So we didn't feel like it was fair to continue trying to force this, requirement on businesses and people who are trying to start a new business in there when it's clearly not something that there's land for, and short of that parking garage, it's really not going to be attainable.
Jim,
Yes.
Want questions as you're going through the slides?
I'd
or
rather
at the
get through
end?
the 4 and then have you ask me if that's all right.
Yep.
And then number 2, develop additional lots for parking in town. You know, there's a map in there that shows 20 different possible areas. We don't own them all. Some of them would require purchasing that property, but I am going to tell you, I'm focusing on like a laser on 2 areas: the Old Town Shop site and Lakeview Drive from Rodeo Court to the end of the cul-de-sac. Those were 2 areas where the town owns land and has control of, and we could get 100, and the estimate is 145 additional spots by developing in the next 12 to 18 months, paving over at the Old Town Shop site and getting spots there, and then from Rodeo Court on Lakeview Drive all the way to the end, putting in slant parking and building up that edge that's closest to the reservoir. This is something that, in my opinion, Emmett may have a different opinion on this, we have the ability to do within our town staff. We have paving operations right in town. I don't know how overworked you are right now, but I'm trying to add one more project to your list here. If there's been a lot of talk that, hey, we're really holding the town shop site for affordable housing. That's not dropping out of the sky in the next 2 years. I promise you the funding for that is not going to be here next year. So in the meantime, we can develop that as parking, utilize it, figure out the drainage, and plan for future possible affordable housing. But we could at least start to address this problem for the festivals and the different things and leaf peeping season and all those. Moving on to recommendation number 3, wayfinding signage and trail walkability. That's already in the process with the DDA. There's already a plan in there, and basically that would, as we saw it, that would be some kind of a map board right there at the visitor center with a QR code that, both a physical map that you could see for those of us old folks that don't do QR codes, that says you are here, here's where the parking is. And also here's a QR code for you if you want to follow your phone right to those 2 spots. Again, we're just focusing on 2 spots that you can implement and get 145 new spots in town within the next 2 years. That's the goal. The physical signage and then and improving trails would be a big part of that, so that both of those areas are within a 10-minute walk of the central business district. The goal was to find areas on both ends of town that the town owned within 10 minutes walk of the central business district. And the last recommendation is for paid parking on East First Street. That is right there in front of all the businesses. And there's 25 identified spots right now there that if we implemented paid parking, and thanks to Tom and some information he's been able to glean, we were able to quantify that as an average revenue of $80,000 per meter per year. 25 spots works out to $2 million. And you can argue about that with Tom.
I believe
but
we've got experts coming on next. We can argue with them.
Great.
Okay.
So I don't have any numbers to back that up. I'm basing that on other expert information.
Okay.
But the main part of that is that the parking survey let us know that the business owners are frustrated with people coming, parking all day and going hiking, going skiing. Business with their employees. Like, I don't know, if I was an employee of one of those businesses, I would do the courtesy of the customers and not parking there. But apparently they say a lot of employees park there.
They do.
And tie it up all day. And so the idea is if we could put in that paid parking right there in front of those businesses and start with East First Street, and then possibly for the first phase and the second phase be the visitor center, we could start having turnover there. And if you do want to park all day there, great. You're going to pay for it. I don't think that in this day and age that anybody expects to step out of their car, walk 15 feet and go into the business or the restaurant they want to without having to pay for it. If you want to pay, if you don't want to pay for parking, walk 10 minutes. If you want it free, be prepared to pay. Now, they're going to talk about all these different things. What about locals getting free? What about first 30 minutes? I don't know. You guys figure it out. I'm just giving you recommendations. Okay, so those are my 4 recommendations. I've presented this. We had 7 meetings of the subcommittee. We presented it to the DDA. I presented it to folks in my group at the big collaborative get-together at the park. I presented to the Planning Commission. I presented to you. And generally, I believe that people are in agreement with these are good things. Where I'm worried about is us getting off into side discussions like happened at the last planning commission, well, why don't we partner with RTD and move back to Sled Hill and we'll do this? Maybe, but I'm talking about two possible things with two possible lots. I'm talking about things that we can implement. And when we start talking about we have funding problems for our police department, how important would $2 million go every year to helping us solve that problem? What if we do another 25 spots in the visitor center? Now it's $4 million. I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm just saying these are possibilities that are implementable with this board could finally say, we're going to take some decisive action. We're going to figure out the details as we go, but we're going to vote for it. We're going to say we're going to move forward and actually try to actually make a dent in this problem. And then who knows, maybe the infrastructure money is going to come down the pike in the next 5 to 8 years and we'll build that $5 million parking garage, or we'll do something in partnership with RTD. But everything I'm focusing on is things that you could do within the town without having to try and go have a bunch of meetings with RTD, Boulder County, all these other partners, local business owners. So that is my presentation, and I'm open to your questions at this time.
And I'd like to just, thanks, Vice Chair Reese. I'd like to just offer clarification to the board of what we're seeking tonight. We are looking for the Board of Trustees to provide guidance on 3 things. First, do you support that moratorium? In which case, town staff would need to work with Attorney Madsen to draft an ordinance for the moratorium of both the parking count in the Central Business District and the parking fund. The other ask is, do you instruct staff to continue to research what it would look like to do paid parking and bring back some proposals? And then the third one is, do you support working with the streets department to really evaluate what the cost would be to develop some of these lots? And if so, which ones would be of interest?
Okay. Before Jim steps back, any questions for Jim?
I have some, Jim. So the moratorium, I'm wondering why a moratorium and not just a permanent removal of the commercial parking fund and the off-street parking requirements.
Same question.
What will change in 2 years?
I will tell you that really we thought that had the most, everything that you'll see in here are things that I thought had I pushed for. And the group, the subcommittee, I'm sorry to use I a lot. There was collaborative effort there. Thank you for your help, that you guys would actually approve. So basically, if you guys decide, hey, this is really not working for us, we really need to look at changing the code, how it's enforced down there in Central Business District, that's great. I would love to get rid of it. And the feedback is it's not working in general. I just honestly, and we kind of decided as a group that you would be more willing to do a short-term thing and kind of study it, because unfortunately, in our town, we have a history of saying, let's look at that. Let's have another subcommittee. Let's have some more meetings. We need another survey. Well, we had a survey. We've done all the things. Now's the time to act.
Well, and I can jump in on that too. I think a part of the moratorium was, if Chris Pelletier and I don't necessarily hate the parking fund, I think that there is an opportunity for that to be a revenue stream if it was implemented correctly and had better parameters in terms of how it was enforced. And so I think it's an opportunity to dive into code. I think if you're going to start removing stuff, you might as well do a deep dive into the parking code altogether, not just remove these 2 pieces and then see what happens. I'd rather see a moratorium and a deeper study of code.
That was the much better answer right there.
Yeah, I'm hired to back you up.
Thank you.
All right. So along the lines of moratorium of off-street parking requirements for businesses in the Central Business District. So I think the problem that we face is requiring additional parking when there's construction done, like a remodel or new construction. And so I'm wondering if we shouldn't say no new parking in the Central Business District instead of a moratorium on all off-street parking requirements, because I think we want to maintain the existing parking that we have. For example, at Ubon, Salto, Kathmandu, Peak to Peak Animal Hospital, Snyder Garage. Now, I can understand on that one block on East First Street up to Snyder, from 72 to Snyder, where there's just, the businesses are wall to wall. But I'm wondering if we really want to say no off-street parking is required. And, when rebuilds are done or remodels, the businesses could just the developers could use up all the spaces that are there.
Yeah, I don't see a concern.
Well, and I guess I didn't really present that correctly. It wasn't like we're then saying, okay, Uban, now you can build another building right there and we don't need any parking. Basically, it was going forward from here until we could kind of get our hands around the code that we were going to put a pause on this requirement for new businesses and get a chance to look at it. Initially, I'll tell you, the subcommittee said, how about 1 year? And I said, I don't think that's enough time for us to figure it out. I know how things move in the planning commission and we'll probably need 6 months in a subcommittee to go over that, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure we could draft it such that a new build, if there were to be a new build on a vacant lot, or if something were to be scraped and rebuilt, that we could evaluate that in the SRU or whatever it might be. And we don't have to necessarily write it such that they have no parking requirements no matter what. I think it's just a moratorium on how it currently lies.
Right, because if something was to come forward in an SRU or a PUD, there obviously is the ability to address parking separately and make an additional requirements or to pull back. We're just saying that your count isn't automatically 72.
Right.
Like it happened to be when Kathmandu came for theirs. I mean, that's the way in which it calculates now. It's just not feasible to even have that parking anywhere.
Okay.
I think my other comments are for when we go around and
Okay.
debate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Tanya, before Jim steps back, anything that you want to ask?
To ask Jim personally, no. I just wanted to extrapolate on what Karen was saying, that I've always said that we need to, put a moratorium except for new constructions and for housing units. And I think at that point, we should keep our current code, or at least have it go through a planning commission or something, because like, for instance, like we've got a new situation with Schneider's, which I'm really excited for. It's going to be great, but they would see a moratorium and they could be like, okay, cool, we're going to use the entire footprint. I mean, they have enough room there. I mean, I've been eyeing that parking for a long time. They got like 5 or 6 spots there. I would hate for them to think that they didn't need to keep those 5 or 6 spots. So I do think we have to discuss that before we put a moratorium on, or how is that going to be dealt with? Because that will probably come before us within the next year or so, while this moratorium is on. So, and I feel like if you're remodeling and you're expanding, then you need to accommodate that a little bit. So, but as far as everything else goes, I'm full agreement. I would love to even purchase more property from people who own land. For instance, near Harvest House, that triangle lot would be amazing to have it as parking, and to own it for whatever other reasons. We do have that space on Old Town, off the highway there, where there's a bunch of aspen trees and stuff. That could also be parking. It could also be nothing. It could be a pocket park. It could be portable housing. But otherwise, I would say move forward with everything. But I do want to make sure there's a clause that when there's a new project coming in, that they're not completely absolved of any parking responsibilities.
Okay.
We could add that. I just want to make one quick correction to the record. Kathmandu only needed approximately 30 spaces to the tune of $72,000,
Right.
not 72 spaces.
Yeah. Well, either way, it was too many.
Right.
But
And
at
too
the same
much.
time,
Too many and too much.
we thought that, okay, you got to at least accommodate your apartments.
Yes.
And so I still feel strongly about that. And I do also feel strongly for people who come in who are going to start fresh. I didn't love how Apothecary used their entire footprint. It seems so contradictory. We have our parking code, yet you're also allowed to use your whole footprint. Well, which one is it? So I think the moratorium should, be there. But are you assuring me that any of these projects that come through will get some kind of scrutiny for parking?
I think we could work with Attorney Madsen to draft language that would create that space where new construction would need to come forward for some sort of agreement. I don't know, Attorney Madsen, if you have some initial thoughts.
A compromise. I do think what we have now is too extreme, but given the reality of the footprint of people's spaces. But yeah, okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Miranda.
Jim, before you step back one last time, 2 lots yields how many parking places?
Say that one more time.
2 lots would, these 2
Those-
lots.
Oh,
Specifically.
so phase 1 and phase 2 for the paid parking?
No, yeah, how many?
No, the
I think
town
talking-
shop and
Oh,
Lakeside.
145.
140.
145. Those were estimates based on Google Maps and doing some, measurements off of computer screens.
Mhm.
But so I can't 100% say
That's
that
a-
is,
that's
but I'd say
significant.
that, but would be a huge improvement
Indeed.
when we get to these festivals and things in town. And I'm just gonna, before I step away, I'm gonna say one more time, as if I didn't beat this dead horse to death.
Mhm.
Please try not to get sidetracked into more committees, more meetings. Let's get into partnership with these other people. Again, the focus is try to implement and move the ball down the field here in the next 18 months to 2 years. And let's say that we're at least doing something about it instead of continually having meetings and subcommittees and surveys.
Well,
That's all I
Jim,
have.
then stick around because I think you'll want to hear what's coming.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
In terms of,
Before I've invited one parking vendor to come in tonight to talk with us. They've walked the streets with us. They've
okay.
got-
Well, I would like to discuss these recommendations from
Yeah,
the planning commission, just independently of that first, if we can.
sure, go right ahead.
I'm wondering if we could get public comment on the recommendations before we discuss it as a board, because I'd like
Sure.
to hear what the public says too.
Okay. Miranda?
Sure.
Don't see, Ron came off mute. Ron, go ahead.
I would like to see you just junk the parking ordinance. I don't think you need a 2-year moratorium. It hasn't worked for anybody, not anybody. Everybody's got an exception to it that needed it at the time to do their development. And I don't understand why you feel you should extend it. Just get rid of it. It has no function. It doesn't work. Give the guy his $5,000 back and start over. Thank you.
Others, Miranda? Hi, Rich.
Name's Rich Orman, I'm a town resident. I don't know if this is really apropos of the report, but one thing I noticed at one of these meetings where the town board got together with the trustees, I was told that the RTD lot is actually open for public parking, that it was some type of agreement. And see, I see nodding and shaking of heads, so I'm not sure. But there's a sign there that says absolutely not, you have to be on a bus to park there. So I just found that to be somewhat contradictory as to the information I received. And if that is in fact open to the public, that sign really is inappropriate.
Yeah. My understanding is that it was open to the public originally.
So I think that the trustee Blakemore in this meeting had asked, and we just haven't had a chance to dive into it, was where is that agreement? And we have not yet located a signed agreement that would state that. And so I think there is some confusion or misperception about what can and cannot be done there. And that's something that needs to be straightened out.
So our RTD documents that their parking rights are reserved for transit users. Maybe we have an exception to that I'm not that I haven't seen.
Yeah, that is the way that, as long as I've been involved in town, that has been described to me. That there was an agreement that is a special exception for the town of Nederland with RTD for using that lot as public parking. That is what I have been told by multiple town administrations.
I think that we now have to track down said agreement
Yeah.
or talk with the RTD to see what their understanding is of that. And so that is something that is on our list to do.
Oh, sorry.
I just said I think that might be an urban legend.
Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is a myth. Yeah. I mean, but then, town staff cannot be operating based on a myth, right? Because that's challenging. And also, it should be available for public parking. It's a waste of space if not.
I can tell you that when there's been events in town and there was discussion about using that as a parking lot, RTD was very clear that you're supposed to get a special permit to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see requiring a private event to get a special permit to have parking for their private event in an RTD lot. But the question is, I guess the question becomes, what is the agreement with the town, and how does that actually operate?
There are times when the parking ride is full. It
Huh.
happened when I was
Good.
catching a bus to go to a meeting in Denver that I happened to miss because I couldn't find a parking place.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's prime real estate for parking in town. I mean, I've also seen it where it's completely barren for days on end. So it seems absurd that such parking spaces wouldn't be used by people visiting town. So I in terms of these recommendations, I mean, I am personally, the wayfinding, I think, is something that ProSAP and the NDDA need to continue to solve. That I feel fairly confident some progress will be made there, especially in the duration of the moratorium that's been proposed here. I think a moratorium is, while I actually completely agree with Ron Mitchell that this parking code is not working.
Utterly not.
I think that the most expedient way to deal with it is to put a moratorium in place for an extended period of time, rather than attempt a code change, which is just more complicated and requires more public input, requires more committee meetings, requires more everything, right? If we're going to like really dig into changing code and not make the same mistakes that have been made in the past, right? With putting in code or removing code in ways that is not consistent with the rest of our ordinances, right? Like we just run a lot of risks if we do that in a too rapid a fashion. So for me, the easiest way, the clearest way is to put a moratorium in place. Make it a 2-year moratorium. Sounds good to me. Return that money. Just return it. It's not working. It hasn't been used in the way that we said it would be used. So fundamentally, I think it's not really fair to hold on to it. And then in terms of developing, lots in town, which is the second recommendation here, I really like redesigning Chipeta Park. I think it's desperately inefficiently designed. And that we could develop a lot more spaces in the Chipeta Park parking lot if we simply just put in some, curbs, those just like parking blocks would immediately open up many spaces in Chipeta. I really like Lakeview Drive. I would like town staff to investigate the lot that town owns east of Rodeo Court. I like the idea of promoting the community center. I like designating more clearly parking on East 3rd behind the Quick Mart. I like developing parking on West 1st Street. I don't know what the possibilities are there, but I think that's a smart place also to develop some parking. People already park there, but it's inefficient. It's not well designed. There probably could be more spaces we could eke out of that land if we had it designated more appropriately. I'm at this stage, I hear everything that Jim is saying about the Old Town Shop site. I think that might be a harder sell, and I don't want to get bogged down in a lot of outrage regarding the use of that land for a parking lot. I don't mind investigating it, but I don't think that moving on these other options should be held up by talking about the Old Town Shop site ad nauseum. Right,
Agreed.
because I think that we run the real risk of doing that if we don't move on the things that we can actually move on. So I would rather focus on the things I think will hopefully go over better with the community and with the neighborhoods that they're in. Using those more efficiently, developing more spaces there, and then opening up that Old Town Shop conversation as a secondary maybe conversation that we can have.
Kayla, you had something to say? Yes.
Well, I have one more. So just to finish my positions on this in terms of paid parking, I completely agree with his recommendation. I think the order of the phases makes sense to phase in East 1st Street first, Visitor Center lot second. To me, this is revenue that we absolutely must generate. It is obviously a problem for residents, visitors, and businesses. And I do think if we do this right and we get the right recommendations and we consider it carefully, that we'll be able to alleviate some, definitely not all, of the concerns by all three parties, by all three stakeholders in this by implementing some version of paid parking. We can generate some revenue. We can ensure that people can run an errand without necessarily being, immediately charged exorbitant amounts of fees. But we can also make sure that there's a relatively frequent turnover in those spaces, that people aren't parking there to hike, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I'm feeling about it.
Kayla? One of you.
Kayla Evans, 1250 Eldora Road. I have a couple questions, but I also have a lot of comments. Number one, who is this parking for? Is it for the residents? Is it for tourists coming to spend money in these businesses? It makes absolutely no sense to own a business in town and have your employees park right in front of the business and keep their spot. I mean, for years, I volunteered the parking on the lots that the Historical Society has behind the steam shovel for town hall employees. Never used it, didn't want to. Oh, it's too far to walk. What the? Anyway. So I think the businesses in town, it behooves them to make sure that none of their employees are taking spots right in front of their businesses and for all day. Okay. Second, when the weather is inclement, nobody wants to walk blocks and blocks to a business. You're going to lose them. They're not going to go to a restaurant. They're not going to go in and go shopping. They have to be able to park within X number of feet carrying their groceries, or they're just not going to do it. As far as tourists, it's the same thing. You make one circle and then you go, there's no place to park. Let's go to Estes. Let's go to Boulder. Let's go to Central City. We lose a lot of people in this community because there's no place to park.
Great.
So the next, as far as the RTD is concerned, I have a very love-hate relationship with them for well over 15 years. We've been trying to make a deal with them to allow us to rehabilitate the Bryant House that's sitting there rotting away, which is the oldest building in Boulder County and should be a treasure in our community. Most people don't know what it is. They think it's just this crazy falling apart building. That was moved because RTD needed to put their drainage pond right where the building was. We cannot historically designate that until it is the town has to. We've had town administrators trying to work with the RTD more times than I can tell you. They've got to let us have the land that the building is sitting on so we can landmark it. I hope that's something, Miranda, that you can restart that conversation with them. But the other idea is if RTD does not want to put their second level on or do the part over where the kids sled in town, maybe it's fiscally advantageous to the town to say, if you don't want to do that, would you let us put a second story up there? Because you really have to have parking that's close enough for people to walk to these businesses or you're going to lose them. People are lazy. I'm sorry. Locals will walk. That's great. Locals should not be parking right in front all day long of these businesses. And, we need to think about alternative ways of parking. There's a big parking lot up here that if we had a shuttle, we could run. There are other parking areas in the community that are not being utilized because they are further away. And so maybe the idea of running a shuttle constantly will help as opposed to spending another $30,000 on a parking study. We're smarter than this. We can figure it out. We don't need somebody to tell us that we have a parking problem in the town, and we can probably figure out collectively how to fix it by being smart about it. So I challenge you, and I challenge the next board to come up with an idea without spending $35,000 to do another study. So
thanks, Kayla.
Thank you.
Billy?
Hi, I'm Billy Giblin. I live at 196 South Tilden Street in Old Town. First, thanks for the public survey. Thanks for your work, Jim and Cynthia and Miranda. And Linda, that public survey was super encouraging to have over 200 people participate. That's just encouraging to get more public participation in general. First, I'll talk about the job sites. I mean, or the parking spots. I think looking at places more proximal does make sense, so people don't have to walk too far. The rodeo, beyond, Chipeta Park, I think is a spot that just needs redesign and just organization. Rodeo Court makes sense. I think the old town shop, I think we get into paving. We just heard it costs 50 grand to pave that stretch of School Road. How much is it going to be if we start paving all these parking lots? I would go easy on what we pave and don't pave, but I think the old town shop, the peak-to-peak housing and human services alliance is closer than you think to proposing a shovel-ready plan. I think anything, if we use the town site for anything, I think it needs to be not developed too much, because it could very well end up as a housing project location in the future. So that's my bit about additional sites. I agree with what Karen brought up and Tom agreed to, and what Ron said. I think ultimately a moratorium is a good first step. Do that, and then let's talk about whether we just get rid of the commercial parking fund, because it is kind of a setup for failure. As for paid parking, the gateway drug to seeing a lot of the mountain towns go downhill. I think for one thing, I wanted to do a little math correction. So, I first heard that 80,000 thing. I was at the Chipeta Park, and Jim presented that, and I was like, wow, that seems like a lot of money. And I said it to a friend of mine who's a tradesman, and he just broke out his phone, did a little quick math. So 80,000 divided by 365 is $219 a day. 219 divided by 24 is $9.13 an hour. So are we going to be making $9.13 an hour, 24/7, 365? It's more like 8,000 maybe, that we're going to make $22 a day, $2 at 11 hours. So it'd be 8,000 is unless the other 72,000 is from parking tickets. I'm hoping we're not looking at being a town that makes money on parking ticket revenue. It's really more like 8,000. So I'll be interested to hear what these guys say, but I don't know where that money would come from realistically. It's just $9 an hour all year long isn't going to happen. And then, if we do go to paid parking, even as local areas, I think locals for free, certain amount of time for free. Locals have a decal, something which allows locals to zip in for quick errands. And I think the wayfinding and the parking, I saw the presentation that group does on QR codes. I mean, not everyone has a smartphone. I'll be honest and say I just figured out how to use QR codes this year, and I've had a smartphone for a decade. So not everyone knows how to use them. We need to make options for people that don't know how to do that or don't know how to get an app on their phone. And regarding a parking vendor, I appreciate, Tom, that you're working with these guys and getting their point of view. But if we go anywhere with it, we got to talk, put out an RFP and talk to a bunch of people, not just zero in on somebody. That's it.
Thanks, Billy. Any other public comment? Okay.
Not that I see online.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So I haven't really disagreed strongly or substantially with anything that anyone said so far. To answer the questions before the board, I'm fine with instructing staff to work with Attorney Mattson to draft an ordinance for the moratorium. The lots in town for parking. I'm not in favor of having a parking lot in a residential neighborhood. And I'd prefer a land use that's more beneficial to the neighborhood and would provide more of a sense of community. For example, a park or community gardens. Housing, in my opinion, would be preferable. A parking lot, even temporarily, creates noise, fumes, and issues with camping and overnight use. And often, temporary uses become more permanent. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'd like to see our code updated to include parking lots and which zones they can be built in. The only other parking area that I think that I'd be a little bit hesitant on is the Lakeview Drive east of Rodeo Court. I'd want to make sure that we get input from the community that lives in that around that area. For the paid parking, I think there's still interest in having a pedestrian mall on East First Street between Highway 72 and Snyder. Maybe we could try to close off that area for a couple weekends and see how it works, and maybe put picnic tables out there. I do see that paid parking has benefits. It's a disincentive for automobile use. It encourages people to use alternative transportation. It reduces emissions and congestion, and it increases revenue. So to answer the other questions that have been posed to the board, I would like to see the streets department start investigating parking lots. And then I would like to see the staff research how to implement paid parking. But I'd also like us to consider a pedestrian mall there on First Street, East First Street. Thank you.
One thing.
Hey, this is Tanya. Oh, go ahead, Eric. Eric, you go.
I was just going to throw out the area east of, that triangle on Lakeside, or Lakeview, sorry. My brain is not working. That could be developed into parking has also been mooted. I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen or what anybody's going to do, but there has been a real kind of push from the community to have a dog park somewhere in town. And so if we could pair a practical, need with a community kind of neighborhood desire by having parking that would also serve as parking for a dog park that could be developed in that area, I think that might be really a kind of a win-win situation. So there are ways that I think that also parking lots don't have to just be paving paradise, right? Like we can use this as a way to develop areas that are currently underutilized by the community itself and by the neighborhoods that surround it. So
you mean Peakview Park or whatever, or Big Springs Point?
Yes, Big Springs Park.
That is where you guys want to put a dog park?
I didn't say that's where I want to do anything.
Okay.
These
it's
are
got a lot
just
of nice trees and shade. I'd hate to have those all cut down for. That's another conversation. But I do agree with your point that is a pocket park that is underused and really neglected, and it would not be bad to have parking at that spot.
Yeah, we've talked about having a dog park.
It doesn't have to be an official dog park, because a lot of people use that for fishing and lake access.
Yeah, well, the key to a dog park would be that it's fenced, right? So that you could let your dog off leash, and that's really the key there. Is that's right. To develop a fenced area that you're allowed to let your dog off leash, and it doesn't have to be the whole area, right? And we have also discussed it being wooded. That is a dog park that has trees. Because we live in the woods, like that seems reasonable to me. So there are lots of.
That's another conversation, but I do agree that is an area that could use more parking, because that is a pocket park that is underused, and it is a beautiful area, and it does have access to the water, and it's good for fishing and for getting to the lakeside trails. Yep. I wanted to add that paid parking, we have to put a lot of investment in it, but I think I think we should do it. The new paid parking now, I mean, you guys have seen it in Boulder. I've seen it all over Colorado. It's becoming just the way it is. I'll be blocks away from a area that I think is where I want to be, and I still have to pay to park in many communities. So I'm not opposed to it at all. And these new kiosks, right? You put in your license plate number, and you get the first 15 minutes for free. I don't know how it works, and I guess they have a paid staff that drives around that checks the license plates. And apparently, all you have to do is just like aim your little machine at the car, and it tells you if they've paid or not. So I think it's a good idea, and I think we should consider investing in the newest technology available, even though it's going to put us in debt for a while, because any other way is just not going to make any sense. in my opinion. And you do get the first 15 minutes for free, which will address the people who want to just run into the co-op and get a 12-pack of eggs. I'm for everything on this proposal. I want to include community center as somewhere that we really advertise more, because there's a ton of parking there all day long that doesn't get used, except for like movie nights. And I also want to address that in a future conversation, when our budget is more squared away and we're not in a crisis, that we think about a shuttle, especially in the winter time. When roads are difficult, that we move people to park at the community center, or we move people to park at Jupiter Park, but we have we move people to park at Teens and at Fisherman's Lot, and we drive around and we pick them up and take them around, because not everybody is able-bodied, and so I do think that we need to keep that in mind. So that's, and you don't have to be handicapped with the special handicap to be willing to walk a few blocks because of a knee that hurts you or whatever, like that. I mean, everyone's like, oh, there's handicap parking, but that doesn't, you can still just be a little gimpy. So those are my 2 cents, and I think I'm done. And I want to, I hope my direction is clear.
Good. Anybody else? Nope, I got nothing to say. We've got some folks that are going to talk to us next about a possible solution.
Cynthia's got her hand raised online.
Who does?
Hey everyone, this is Cynthia Baki. I was part of the subcommittee. Just a few thoughts to Kayla's comment when she talked about employees parking up front. Keep in mind that the parking code needs work. Section 16-206 talks about location of space. It's within 300 feet of a building measured in a straight line. So I don't want to get down into the weeds, because there are a lot of aspects of the code in general that do need work, in the zoning code explicitly. But something to keep in mind is that staff doesn't have discretion to enforce the code. We're supposed to enforce the code. So when a parking count comes out to be 30 some, and it would look like 72,000 for Kathmandu, that's what we're going to tell them. And it puts town staff in a position when people come for waivers, which was the catalyst for saying, why not put a moratorium on the commercial parking fund? Because town staff has to ask for that, but clearly it's not popular, and then people are going to come get a waiver from the Board of Trustees. So it creates a challenging disconnect for staff. Our intentions, because certainly when we got together, we had built on the work that we had started with Trustee Corvalon and former trustee Lindsay Danforth, and looked at a bunch of spots, West First Street and other areas that could be expanded. And really with this subcommittee, we were trying to make some quick, bite-sized, fast possibilities that could be enacted within a 2-year time span, essentially, that could potentially offset the parking challenge that's going on. And one would naturally lead to the other, is the intention, is that once parking spaces are expanded and made available, there will be walking in the town, more discoveries for people to have with businesses and other opportunities to hang out near the riparian area and see other sites in Nederland. And that ostensibly the tourists who want to park close can pay. And then those other spaces in Lakeview, would be more inclined to be locals, or, people willing to walk around the town and check it out. So we don't have to die on the hill of, where it's located, but what we were looking for was a lot of spaces and the potential to get a lot of bang for your buck in a short amount of time with limited funding. So just I think that Jim conveyed that, but I just kind of want to underscore that we did spend some time talking about different spots, and ultimately decided if we could come up with some, 4 bite-sized morsels to work on, rather than kind of kick back and keep talking about this and talking about where we need parking, but actually get things implementable in a short amount of time, even if they would change, and maybe hand the baton on to a future subcommittee who's going to look at what paid parking is, or other spots to develop, or other aspects of that. So hopefully, this serves as a catalyst to think about those things, and seeing as wayfinding, those aspects are already being looked into by the DDA. It felt like we could work in unison to create a more rounded opportunity for parking in the town. Thank you.
Just one more thought, Miranda, when we do kind of research paid parking and start looking at how to do that and where and all that, that we do a test case first before we commit to paid parking permanently or in a large area or across the town. Just try it out first and see what happens maybe on the East First Street, unless we make that into a pedestrian mall.
Anybody else, Miranda?
I'm so confused. What is this pedestrian mall that I keep hearing about? Is this something on town plan?
It has been an interest of some residents for a long time. I've talked to longtime residents who've mentioned it as being discussed previously, and I think it would be, something that I'd like to explore. Just that one block on First Street East between 72 and Snyder.
I still don't see how that affects the paid parking or anything. That's got nothing to do with it.
It doesn't.
So can we bring this up at a different time?
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
Jordan and Scott, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, and I know Jordan is as well.
Okay.
Good evening.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Great.
If you will, I was going to give a brief introduction, and then Jordan was going to provide a little presentation of modern technology. By way of background for everyone on this in this meeting, my name's Scott Petrie. I'm a principal with an organization called Park Trans Solutions LLC. We're a national consulting firm, and our basic mission is to provide advice and solutions regarding parking-related challenges. And what we try to do is bring the best of technologies forward to develop solutions to reduce congestion, reduce emissions associated with idling, and provide broader access to mobility services and devices. I served on a planning commission, so I very much respect this process and have been involved in the process. I think it's important that community participation be very active. So I commend you for doing that when you're trying to consider something that is this new to you and to your town. Agreed with a lot of the comments that were made about probably should implement this as a pilot. Typically, when this is done in communities, there is a baseline study. I hear that you have had some parking studies, and that study would provide a lot of data and experience based upon how similar towns have operated. Now, for 4 years before being involved in Park Trans Solutions, I ran an organization called the Philadelphia Parking Authority, and you may be familiar with it in that if you've seen Parking Wars, not the finest moment in TV, but nonetheless, that was before my time in running the organization. I was the executive director. The Philadelphia Parking Authority has 1,000 employees. The on-street revenue alone is about $125 million a year. Obviously, Philadelphia is a very large city. We operated 6 garages, 2 million square feet at the Philadelphia International Airport, red light camera, speed camera, that was involved in many projects. I would say that based upon my experience, I wish that I had what you currently have, and that is a blank slate. Because if I had the blank slate, I wouldn't have had to deal with the old decisions that were made in old technologies. The Philadelphia Parking Authority probably throughout its existence bought the best technology that was available at the time. But there is really no need. And as a, for instance, when we replaced our kiosks, which were 8 years old, we went to the most modern kiosks. They're very, very good. We cut down the number of kiosks. We got rid of all the single meter poles. The expenditure was $9.5 million. There's no reason under the sun today to do that. You may need a couple pay stations around town, but I would really suggest that buying something that is as archaic with the way the industry is going as the kiosk is not a good venture. That kiosk will be obsolete in 3 to 5 years if it's not already obsolete for many users. Now, having said that, it's always important to provide broad access to everyone, and that's why you might have some pay stations around town. I also just by one final background, I also served in the state legislature for 15 years. So again, I'm very conversant in the multi-government process. Generally, what you're trying to accomplish, and I heard it said so many times, you obviously have a turnover problem that's affecting your businesses, and it also affects your patrons because and your local patrons in particular, because that means when I need to go to the grocery store and somebody else is parked there all day, obviously I can't get good access. And what you're trying to do is support good public policy. What are the goals that you have, and how do we get there? Jordan's going to talk a little bit about a modern solution that Get My Parking, which is a client of ours, has. Just before I introduce to you Jordan, who knows your town very well, and he'll explain to you why, I wanted to share with you also that I understand you have a proposal for parking consultant services from the Dixon firm, which is Dixon Resources Unlimited. They have done a number of parking studies involving resort towns. They're listed in the report. They include Springdale, Utah, Ketchum, Idaho, Park City, Whitefish, Montana, and Maui. In the case of Springdale, they were dealing with the problem of visitors associated with Zion National Park. And so this team is well familiar with the kinds of issues that develop and the natural battle lines between residents and visitors, and really how to develop that. It's a 3-part study. The first part was based upon, they pulled some Google Maps and proposed a study area that would be 50 block faces and 10 parking lots. Obviously, you could modify that, but in order to get something on paper to share with you so you could have some idea of relative cost, that would be the first phase, and they would deliver to you heat maps and the like that would indicate to you problem areas and some data that would make the runs that they do. And the way they would do that study, they would go out on a Thursday and on a Saturday at 3 or 4 times a day, and they would run a license plate recognition camera mounted on a vehicle and collect the data, and then put it in a form that you could digest and determine how you wanted to tackle the various areas. And then it would be they have all additional services if you wanted to take those on. So without further ado, Jordan, would you like to do your presentation of a solution and introduce yourself, and then we'll both entertain questions, of course.
Scott, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, you're in the room.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Honored to be here. I'm a former resident of Nederland. I used to live off of Frontier Lane and Magnolia Road, 2009, 2012. Frequent visitor of the Wild Mountain Smokehouse, as well as the Covered Wagon Saloon. So the town of Ned's got a near and dear place to my heart. And you can find me usually on weekends, unless I'm kid wrangling. I'll be up riding some of the trails at West Mag or visiting some friends at Tinshed Sports. So Thanks for having me here. I currently live in Arvada, so more or less local to the Front Range here. And I work for an Indian software company called Get My Parking. I'm going to take you through a quick journey of some of the newer software technology that our organization has created for parking operations on a global perspective. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. Bear with me. Tom, it looks like I'm going to have to log out and log back in. So, Scott, if you could just do a little bit of background and get my parking for a minute.
Sure, of
I'm going
course.
to jump back into the meeting here in a second. Thank you.
So what you're going to see is a white labeled application when someone goes and begins a parking session, your town logo is going to pop up. And the rudiments of the system, it's a very robust permitting validation process. And it can be structured in many, many ways. There can be a VIP status for folks. There can be free time. There can be tiered rates. There are just so many options that are available. It's quite impressive. Okay, Jordan's back. So I just started talking about the white label aspect of it.
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
There we go.
Yeah, we see it.
All right, sharing my screen here. See if I can kick this into full screen. I'll take you through a quick journey of our solution and our global presence. This is mostly meant for educational purposes. I understand the town will need to definitely go out to an RFP for any type of paid parking solution. But I think one of the benefits of having this conversation today is that a solution like this, and there are definitely multiple players in the space, a solution like this can provide a testing environment for the town of Ned to have minimal investment and collect a significant amount of data in order to make educated, data-driven decisions around paid parking for the future. So Get My Parking's presence, it's an Indian software company. We have a partnership with Apcoa Parking, the largest parking operator in the world, across 13 countries in Europe. Overall, we have our solutions in 19 countries with 18 white label apps. So roughly 18 customers that use our solutions that are white labeled native apps for iOS and Android devices, as well as web apps. So no app downloaded needed. Significant amount of locations use this platform on a daily basis to generate revenue as well as control compliance and citation revenue per location. A quick little bit of background on the team. We were founded roughly 7 years ago by our co-founder Chirag Jain. He serves today as our CEO, lives in New Jersey. I live in Arvada here and covered North America from a sales perspective with roughly 5 years of experience within the parking industry. And then Scott and Kevin serve as partners for Get My Parking. They've been instrumental in helping us gain a foothold in the North American market, especially during COVID. We have offices in Bangalore, Stuttgart, Austin, and my house here in Arvada. Overall, we have the largest tech team within the parking industry. Roughly 120 software developers and engineers serve this product and continue to iterate it and update everything that we do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. I'll take you through a quick journey of some of the products we have. Holistically, the conversation is around the fact that our solution is 100% white labeled for your operations, and you can pick and choose any one of these products seen on the screen here to manage any aspect of your parking operation. So essentially, this solution grows with the town as the town continues to grow and mature and have different scenarios where parking access and revenue are considered. anything from our white labeled app and web app solutions to an access control solution that integrates with any gated environment. Our QR code payment solution that we'll touch on that's very relevant to on-street and off-street parking, as well as a digitized permit platform that can be available for tenants and residents to essentially create and purchase or acquire their permits in real time through a digital environment to enable them with specific access to certain areas of town. All of this is backed up by a significant amount of reporting and dashboards available right through our Metabase tool to provide a lot of insights and data in order for you to continue to iterate on the business model. A quick look at one of the solutions that would be really relevant to the town. Our team put together a quick white labeled view of what a transaction would look like for either visitors or residents that are coming to park for a couple hours downtown. So this scenario would essentially entail this type of view here. So our focus would be the signage on the right-hand side here, and overall the investment for something like this is very minimal, right? You're talking about signage printing and placement around town where certain parking zones are going to be enforced or checked for compliance. So the solution is all QR code based. We do have the ability for users who are not interested in scanning a QR code or have an issue with a smartphone device to call a Town of Ned phone number to be connected to an operator that can start a session for them based on their license plate number. Just taking a look back at what this mobile app would look like, very similar experience if users downloaded the app that we would white label for you, or if they just scan a QR code and use the web app version with no download necessary. Users could choose the duration that they want to park for, add their license plate number and a credit card, and then go about their day, go about their experience in downtown. One of the really unique benefits of a solution like this is that it instead of providing a static payment and revenue solution like a parking meter, this is dynamic in the sense that all of these rates and user interface can change on a daily basis based on whatever the scenario is. So frozen dead guy days, this entire solution can be changed in order to handle the influx of roughly 20,000 people that come to the town for that long weekend. Parking meters historically cannot accommodate such significant changes to parking infrastructure. The other aspect here is that we've developed a solution called post-pay validations, where users can start a session in an on-street or off-street environment by scanning this QR code. And then we provide the ability for the town to sell advertising space or provide promo codes or offers or deals for parkers to visit local retailers, local shops, restaurants, scan a QR code in that shop to apply a certain validation to that session. So $2 off, free parking, you name the rate configuration, it's all 100% customizable. That brings a lot of new revenue opportunity to the town, as well as the ability for users to have a free parking session as long as they are spending money and interacting with local businesses. The other aspect of that is the significant amount of data that can be captured, especially in a pilot program. Having the solution deployed around town in public and private spaces can help generate a significant amount of data for the town to move forward with any paid parking program. Looking at some of the benefits of a QR solution, I think one of the ones that's really relevant to the town is going to be around EV charging, where we'll have the ability to add a QR code to existing EV chargers, and users can have a seamless experience where they pay for one session, which is parking and EV charging. We also have the ability to, through an open API platform, send all that data to an enforcement team or an enforcement officer that can then change the rates for that user or enforce, using a written notice or some kind of citation, or a warning based on spending too much time at a charger when that charger should be used for another vehicle that could use charging itself. A couple of quick other items related to a solution like this: no registration needed, no app downloads needed, and then we'll integrate with any enforcement company that the town chooses. So we don't provide enforcement ourselves. We're primarily a software company with a very large engineering resource to customize any aspect of the solution so that the town can build its own brand and use that brand to continue to drive revenue and engagement from residents and visitors alike. The other aspect of this is the cross-sell opportunities with Eldora. Running promotions to bring, Eldora wintertime skiers, cross-country skiers, anyone that's going up for hiking, 4th of July trailhead, you name it, to come into town and interact with local businesses. There's a significant amount of value and revenue opportunity there as well. There's multiple types of validations that we can provide across this platform, so it's all customizable. Certain local businesses could offer their own validation types in a private environment compared to a public on-street space. I'm not really going to get into all the details of how this solution functions from a validation perspective, but you can see on the screen here, there's many different validation types as well as validation rules. Pretty much every type of scenario that you could imagine in the commercial parking space, we have encountered and solved for through this software. The post-pay validation solution that we have is really unique to our company. And it really provides a very simplified user experience. User pulls into a parking space, they scan a QR code. It brings up a white labeled web app, which would be white labeled for the town of Nederland. They would choose the duration that they want to park based on whatever rules you set in place. They would start their session after adding a credit card, and then they would be prompted to go to a local merchant or bar, restaurant, or commercial, business, scan a QR code, and apply validation to that session, and only be charged once instead of twice. A use case here would be get your Nordic skis tuned at Tin Shed, tuning value of $50 or more, and you get free parking in a specific zone. There's a lot of different ways we can go about these validations. We can do them through promo codes or by scanning QR codes. So all different types of interactions for different members of local visitors or local residents. A quick look at the EV charging solution. We would be able to provide a map of all locations where users could park around town, as well as locations that have EV chargers and the availability of that charger in real time. So as users are coming to town with an EV vehicle, as long as they did have self-service and are able to, bring up the app on their phone, they would be able to see spaces available as well as chargers available in town and navigate directly there, which will definitely help, limit the impact on congestion. I think something that's really relevant to the town is a self-serve or operator-based monthly permit system. So local residents would have the ability to use this white labeled web page to go online and choose their permit type they would like to acquire for their vehicle. And that's all going to be based on a license plate. There's other, physical types of validating their permit. Like you could, also require them to swing by town hall and pick up a hang tag or a specific sticker if you wanted. But for the most part, in a totally digital environment, users input their license plate number, they select their permit type. We can even set rules to these different permits around approval. So somebody who manages this solution from the back end, employed by the city, would then be able to approve a permit based on where the resident lives. And different permit types, based on zones, as well as based on, commercial use cases as well. So Commercial users could pay a premium for a monthly permit, whereas a resident gets a permit for free, or somebody in the library district gets a permit for free. This is a quick look at what the web app solution could look like, where users have the ability to choose from multiple permit types. We can set capacity to them where there's permits available, there's a wait list, certain permits are sold out, and permits are available for specific zones or locations. I think one really also unique benefit of our solution is interconnecting all of your locations in one software environment allows you to offer the ability to have what we would call a VIP parking pass. So everybody on town council would have the ability to have a pass to essentially be whitelisted to park wherever they wanted with their specific license plate. I'm not 100% sure if that's relevant to the town today, but it's a solution that we've rolled out for commercial operators all over the US as well as in Europe. From a back-end perspective, we have a really robust analytics and dashboard-based platform with infinitely customizable reporting and visibility throughout the organization. So a lot of this is permission-based. Certain users, certain aspects of town council can have certain access to different types of reporting so that everybody has a transparent view of the operation on a daily basis. And all these reports can be automated as well to come in email form with, in PDF, CSV, or Excel on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, whatever is needed per the operation scope. We also have a back-end operator portal where somebody from the town can essentially, assign permits, approve permits, review LPR logs for any license plates that are scanned, and then support users that are having a hard time using a QR code or if they have any technical issues. This entire solution would also be white labeled for the town of Nederland. And then our organization supports you as our client remotely. That's kind of the tour. I wanted to try to keep this as short and sweet as possible. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, Tom, and let you take over.
Board questions first. Okay.
I mean, all the questions I have, I think are nitty gritty things that I'm just curious about that I think I could follow up with offline and not use the board meeting for.
Okay.
I generally have a good sense of what's possible out there. Thanks for that. And yeah.
Good.
And just for the record, I think we're more likely to charge BOT members more for parking than give it away for
It's only
free.
fair.
Exactly.
Excellent.
and tow them if they stay too long.
I did reach out to Brent at Eldora today. Their powder is picked a solution for them to use, but they are interested in cross-selling with whatever solution we pick up, and so Brent is 100% behind that. Tanya, any questions from you?
No, thanks.
Okay.
Just a couple comments that I'd like us to look at kiosks, in addition to an app, just because they're easy to use, and I think ease of use is important. Making it simple and something that visitors who are unfamiliar with the town and with our parking methodology, whatever it is, that they're able to pay for parking easily. So
Okay. Question for you two is wayfinding was one of the 4 things that we said we needed. Can that be built into an app effectively, or have other people done it?
Tom, great question. Yes, wayfinding is available through the app solution that we have, not through the web app. As the app solution, we would populate all of your locations or different zones around town, however you want to configure it, and provide that view for users that are asked or suggested to download the app or frequent users, there's ways we can put promo codes into that environment as well to get users to download the app. The other benefit of a solution, the other benefit of a solution like this is that it provides all of the data from every single session directly to you as the owner of this technology, not a third party. So, from a remarketing perspective, there's a big opportunity there, as well as just from the data that can be generated. When it comes to real-time availability of on-street spaces in that type of environment, our solution's definitely not going to be, the one that's going to check every single box. Online real-time visibility into space availability would be through a company like Spot Parking. There's many technology providers out there that I could recommend. So I'd be happy to make those introductions for you.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Tom, I think it might be beneficial for if this was a path we were going to go, for it to be incorporated with the wayfinding app, because I think there was going to be some kind of QR aspect to it in addition to like real-time apps. So it's, I don't know if you wanted to send this information to Steve Corral, for when he's the head of that wayfinding, because it would be better to have it one organization doing it all.
Terrific.
Yeah, Tanya, to speak to that, typically our solution provides an end-to-end view of the entire revenue operation. We will integrate with any other existing provider that you want to use. We can recommend different providers or take your lead on that. The other benefit to a solution like this is that the town would get to own their payment processor relationship, and so the benefit there is that you get to control the rates that you see on all these payments, and then have money deposited into the town bank account in real time, not on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis.
Great.
Thank you.
One other question for you guys. A significant number of our parking places are privately owned. Could a solution like this integrate the on-street with the private parking?
Yeah, I think that's one of the Tom, I think that's one of the beauties of this type of solution is that it doesn't really differentiate between on-street or off-street unless you want it to. It's all customizable, and that was one of the kind of unique aspects of the first conversations that you and I had around this was the public-private partnership opportunities here in the town of Nederland. I think this solution would work throughout all of those venues.
Great. Okay. Public, any questions from the public? Billy?
Thanks, Jordan. I'm Billy Giblin, and my question is about how much per annual revenue do you guys estimate that a parking spot generates for a town?
So I can tell you that in downtown Philadelphia, obviously it depends upon the rate, but a public parking space in downtown Philadelphia, we usually determine to be $10,000. And that, of course, was just the revenue from that's just the reservation or ticket revenue. I should say the meter revenue. It does not include any enforcement revenue. But that's the number that we traditionally used. There's within Philadelphia, there's a number of holidays that are free parking and et cetera. So that takes all that into account.
Thanks.
That's a really good question. I've got connections at the city of Boulder as well as Estes Park. I'd be happy to make some of those introductions if needed, related to how they've experienced revenue per space in the past, because I think that might be pretty relative to the downtown Ned area. That's really a complicated question because I think a lot of it starts with understanding daily, weekly, monthly usage, which a parking study would certainly help with, unless there's other data points available today for us to build some of those projections off of. Overall, the ROI on a software solution like this, instead of opting for a hardware solution like a kiosk, even though I understand some of the comments, previously related to having both solutions, which I completely understand, and that's something that we could integrate with the Get My Parking solution. But the upfront cost for a solution like this is going to be minimal compared to a significant hardware purchase.
Got it. Thanks.
So as far as the parking study is concerned, we do have an application for grant funding out that we'll hear back by September 21st. And that's for the multimodal transportation plan, which does include an analysis of parking utilization.
We talked this morning about the Estes Park experience. Do you have any figures on what Estes Park has been able to do with it so far?
I do not. I'm sure that we can get that from Julie Dixon because she was part of that study and helping them go through it. And as I understand it from my conversation with her, it was several iterations of several steps. So they phased in their work over time, but I'm sure we can get it. Either Jordan can get it directly from Estes Park and the contacts he has there, or we can get the information from Julie.
Good. Okay, excellent. Ballpark, what are our costs beyond a study? What do implementation costs look like, and what would it cost to build it out?
Yeah, Tom, great question. I can go into a ton of detail on this, but high level, one of the benefits of using a solution like this is that our main focus as an organization is on transactional revenue. So across the board, we charge our clients 15 cents per transaction. And typically, most municipalities, as well as commercial operators in this space, upcharge on that convenience fee. So whether free parking is offered or paid parking is offered, there is definitely a revenue opportunity based on the very low per transaction cost. So for instance, City of Denver, you'll typically see convenience fees per parking session anywhere from 50 to 85 cents. So if you subtract the 15 cent, cost to get my parking, that's a pretty significant revenue model per transaction.
Got it. Okay. Jim, you got to have questions.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for the clarification on the revenue. I believe that, we had a hard time quantifying that, and I did not fact check that. So I'm going to guess that some of that had to do with some enforcement and tickets that caused that number to be inflated. But I think that your customizable solution would be something that would be really great for our town. What I didn't hear, though, in the question to Tom's answer was how much upfront costs. I heard, okay, here's the transaction fee, but I think we're all curious, okay, if we had to implement that, do we have to come up with $50,000 upfront? What kind of upfront cost does the town have? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll speak to that quickly. Typically, building out an app environment like this, native or web app solution, costs in excess of millions of dollars on a upstart basis, as well as maintenance on a yearly basis. Because we've refined this solution globally, we're able to come in at a very low price of $10,000 up front to white label this entire environment. That does not include customizations like a special integration with a pay kiosk or any other kind of building management solution, or let's say that there was an enforcement vendor that you wanted to use outside of the integrations that we already have, and we almost have all of them in the U.S. right now. So those type of extra integrations would definitely include an increase in that upstart cost. At the same time, one thing to just kind of highlight, I'll be really transparent about a business model for a solution like this. One of the reasons that our per transaction cost is so low is that our business is offshored our business is offshored in India. So, we have 120 developers and software engineers there, and we're able to provide this solution at such a low cost because of that. It's a really hardworking team, and I'm really honored to be a part of the organization.
Oh, this is Tanya. I have a question. How does this work with law enforcement in the sense of enforcement? Like, how do we
Yes.
know if someone's not paying?
Yeah, so multiple ways to go about that. Typically, the conversation has two different tracks. One is compliance, and the other one is citation revenue. Really just depends on the municipality's preference or the operator's preference and how they like to handle that. A lot of parkers, when they get a citation, there's a ton of data points around how likely they are to park in that location again, because that's a pretty negative experience. Same thing with a boot or a towing experience. So it just depends on the direction that you wanted to go. But I think this has been mentioned quite a few times. There's a significant revenue opportunity in citations as well. The data that this type of environment can provide you with can show users that continue to abuse the system. So if somebody continues to get a warning, there could be certain parameters set up in an enforcement system where, on the third or fourth warning, a ticket will be generated, citation will be generated.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but how does a town employee know that someone hasn't paid? Is they just scan the license plate, or they have an app on their device? I might have missed it. I'm sorry.
No. It's a really good question, Tanya. So there's two different ways to go about it. One is we have a very simple report through our software that an enforcement agent could see active sessions for transient parkers as well as permit parkers in real time, right through a web link on a phone or an iPad as they walk around town, and then they can manually enforce from there. The other option is an integration with an enforcement group that would have either a handheld LPR camera, license plate recognition camera, or a camera mounted on a bike or a scooter or a golf cart or car or truck that then takes all the session data from our solution and puts it into an enforcement software where notices can be mailed directly to addresses related to a license plate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Kayla? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I had my hand up.
Okay.
I was just I was wondering, where can I go to see this implemented?
Yeah, that's a great question. Today we don't have live locations in the Front Range. In the next 3 months, we should have roughly 100. Outside of that, we've got locations in Northern California, Southern California, Hawaii, Chicago, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Florida, Texas, roughly 500 locations across the U.S. Each one is very unique and 100% white labeled for either the asset owner, the municipality, or the commercial parking operator. So I'd be happy to follow up with Tom after the call with a copy of this presentation, and then make myself available if anyone wants to reach out with questions, but also want to follow whatever internal process you have as an organization, so I don't step out of line.
Great.
And just one other question too. So you mentioned $10,000 per meter, 15 cents transaction cost. So what do the people of the town usually get? Like, if it's $10,000, what amount of that usually goes to the people of the city?
So I
Yeah,
can tell you
James.
in Philadelphia, our return to the city government was significant. Obviously, it depends upon your scale. Philadelphia is very, very large. So our and we have a lot of enforcement officers. So it's really hard to pin down a number. The study, the reason you perhaps consider a parking study that will help you identify what those network numbers would be. But I can tell you in Philadelphia, It was a $265 million grossing organization, and we typically returned 140 million, is that the right number? I'm losing count. No, that is, we typically return 40% of that. So whatever that number was, that was our number. Now that's across a range of businesses, but our on-street operations were highly profitable. I think an earlier commentary though was, it's not necessarily that you're really trying to make money on it. You're really trying to gain compliance and turnover. And the ultimate goal of this good public policy is to provide access to the curb for your businesses, for your residents. And just take as the pandemic, I'll just say this real quickly. During the pandemic, the mayor ordered us not to move vehicles, not to enforce except for safety. The problem with that was then nobody moved. And you wouldn't move your car, even if you had to go to an appointment, because you'd be afraid you'd lose the spot. We had residents who couldn't get medical deliveries and food items and the like. So lack of turnover was just so evident. And it took us a while to get people to move again. So we didn't enforce for 60 days, and it really caused chaos in the city of Philadelphia. So that's your real goal, though. Your real goal is to service your community, especially now where people get more and more deliveries to their house all the time. So
I'm sorry, just to be clear, the city gets 40%?
in the sense of Philadelphia, I can't tell you that will be your experience, but yes, in the sense of Philadelphia, it was 40 cents on every dollar.
James, just to clarify, the Get My Parking one-time fee of $10,000 is to white label the entire environment for an unlimited amount of locations or zones within the town of Nederland. So that's not a recurring cost. That's just a one-time expense.
Yeah. What Jordan is really indicating to you is that obviously the expense side and his solution is very, very small as a percentage of that dollar. The only way that would bump up is in the sense of whatever you decide to do by way of enforcement. But the technology is very inexpensive. That's why I said to you, I wish I had this option or knew about this option before we went out to bid and filled the streets with kiosks. Do you need some kiosks or pay stations? Certainly. For those that don't have iPhones, the like, that's reasonable. But I wouldn't fill every block with a kiosk. You're going to litter your curb. You're not going to like the way the town looks, and they're going to be obsolete in 5 years, in my opinion.
Thanks, Scott. Kayla?
I just have a question. Kayla Evans, 1250 Eldora Road. I think this is something that either needs to be done all across the board for the whole town, because I see problems already in the process here. When you have the shopping center being the largest area for the most businesses actually in town, and you're going to get people parking in the parking lot and walking over the bridge to go to dinner there. So I think there's maybe a conversation to be had, or because that's very problematic for you. And I think, and mama and papa coming from rural, wherever they're coming to, if this is as high tech as it might be also intimidating to certain people that are not as savvy as the gentleman doing this proposal. So we have to be able to be accommodating to them too. And we certainly don't want to lose their patronage. And, that we're already figuring out how we can ticket people who aren't doing that doesn't bode well with the idea of doing it. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I got the same advice from the city of Boulder when I talked with them about this. Their number one admonition was remember the old people and make it easy. Jordan, anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, that's definitely a consideration. It's a topic of conversation that's come up with multiple clients of ours. Typically, we provide a phone number with each one of these QR code payment signs where a user can call the number and start a session through the town administrator or whoever is managing this solution from the town's perspective. So, we definitely do provide solutions like that. But at the same time, if a user doesn't have a phone, and also doesn't have a smartphone, that definitely complicates the scenario. I would say that's, from what we've seen across the U.S., that's going to be the exception, not the norm. And at that point, you're solving for a very small percentage of the overall population. But I definitely do understand the consideration.
Terrific. Thanks. We're getting a little bit late.
So you do have another public comment. CPC has their hand up.
CPC, let's hear from you.
Yeah, hello. This is Paul Carrill, 198 Hurricane Hill. And just two points I want to add to this. First, I want to compliment Jim Reese and his group regarding their study of this matter. And I agree with the whole kicking the can down the street analogy. This has been going on far too long, and some action does need to be taken. The additional component of this, and I certainly don't want to step on the town marshal's toes, but there is a massive enforcement cost to this. While you can certainly use the app, pay with your credit card, at some point, someone or multiple someones throughout a 7-day work week is going to have to move through those parking cars with the LPR, capture that data so that the app can analyze it to see if they're in violation of their parking agreement. And at some point, a ticket or a warning is going to be issued. Well, those people have to be trained to do that so that it's a relatively comfortable experience for the people getting a $50 parking ticket or not. And then if they just leave and fail to receive the ticket, then those have to be issued out. And then you have to deal with warrants regarding parking violations. And all that comes back to your police department. You can certainly use civilian staff to monitor the LPR and move through the parking lots to capture the license plate, but that's more staff you have to pay for. The hardware, the vehicles, that's more you're going to have to pay for. And at some point, your police department is going to have to deal with people that are just not happy getting a parking ticket. If you move away from NPD to contract policing with the Boulder County Sheriff's Department, you also have to make sure that they're willing to take this on, parking enforcement, as part of their contract. So while they're, and I'm talking from a frame of reference that around 2016, 2017, the police department did this entire study back then and provided that to the board in that back then, showing a lot of these issues when you impose a new parking program. At the end of that, all that came from that are those 2-hour parking signs that you see on First Street, and they're in the staff parking lot in front of Town Hall. But always remember, you got to have people to back up all this technology, and someone's going to have to go out there and enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody
Tom, if I could just speak to that really quick. We do have a couple of enforcement partners that we'd be happy to make an introduction to for the town. One of them is actually based in Aurora, so they're local here. And I think it'd be really interesting to learn a little bit more about their revenue models. Is typically the way they build them out is that there's little to no upfront cost, and there's a revenue share on the citations that are generated. Now, that's definitely a slippery slope because then, they as well as the town are, incentivized to generate citations. So definitely something to consider, but I think it's worth investigating.
The other thing I would share is, going back to what I said earlier when I quoted the number 40%, Philadelphia Parking Authority handles not only that not only included the payroll costs for the enforcement officers, it was the tow truck drivers, the impound lot, all of that in there. We were still returning 40% on scale. There is also the ability to mail tickets. As I understand it, in Colorado, you're allowed to mail an invoice, if you will, and there's private enforcement that, as Jordan was saying, that could be available. So there are a lot of options and a lot of considerations. It's certainly something to think about. I personally, from having dealt with, the Philadelphia situation, you're always worried about the safety of your employees too. So the less contact, probably the better. That's why some of these solutions, these tech solutions, are becoming more and more important, because it's a hard job to be a parking ambassador. There's no question about it. It's a hard job if you're going to go ticket by ticket, dropping them. If you have lot situations that you deal with, Jordan's solution works very well with some other enforcement techniques we could talk about at some point in time if you want. Where there would be private enforcement 24/7 through cameras based solutions too. So there are ways to integrate. Those integrations already exist, and they work really well. But each circumstance has a slightly different approach. Would you agree with that generally, Jordan? That you could use a different approach for a big lot than you would maybe your town hall, your town street. The other thing to keep in mind is loading zones. Anytime you have commercial activity, loading zones are really crucial. There are all kinds of ways of monitoring loading zones. Jordan's Get My Parking system helps with that. But those become commercially significant areas, because if your businesses can't get the deliveries, obviously that becomes problematic. And I don't know if you have loading zone problems, but my guess is people just pick a spot.
Yeah.
And in Philadelphia, the beer trucks can't find two spots. So a typical beer distributor in Philadelphia pays about $30,000 a month in fines. That's not a good scenario. There are better solutions than that.
Good. Okay, anybody else have anything to say before we wrap this one up? Okay, so I come back to what Miranda kicked us off with. There's 3 questions she's looking for guidance on. You've got them in front of you. Let's look at the first one. Does the BOT instruct staff to work with Attorney Madsen to draft an ordinance for a moratorium on commercial parking, on the commercial parking fund, and on the off-street parking requirements in the CBD? Okay. Miranda, do you have what you need?
Yes, I think I'm okay.
Okay, good. Okay,
We'll be
gentlemen, I know it's getting very late out on the East Coast. Thanks for staying with us, Scott.
Okay, I can sign off. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good time, everyone.
Okay. Bathroom break, 5 minutes. It's about 25 past. We'll see you in 5.
dead up there, Doug. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, mix them up there already.
Jen and I will be rolling.
Behind this table, the closer I get to saying something stupid.
Okay, let's resume. I'm showing 9:33. And it looks like we've got a quorum. Should we, oh, you're back there still, Macy. Good.
Is Trustee Corvalon, are you back just for clarification?
Trustee Corvalin, you there?
I am here now.
Good. Okay, excellent. Okay, we'll move on to 6.3 supplemental budget. Just giving it a top level look, Miranda, it looks like we'd be going from 1.074 to 1.167. That's about an 8.6% increase.
Yes. So we are coming back to you with the adjustments as we talked about last month. I'm going to run through all these slides, but I do have a representative from every department on. Some of them are online. So if there are questions, but I'm just going to do the quick journey through this. We're going to talk to staff salaries, department requests. There is a reallocation of some already budgeted funds that we just wanted to share with you, and then questions or comments from the board. As a reminder, the proposed changes that are before you are for this current budget only. So it's going to cover any increases through the end of the year. Anything approved under the supplemental budget will obviously have an impact on what happens in 2023. Just don't want anyone to forget that. So first thing is staff salaries. As we discussed last time, we had brought to you a 6% cost of living and a 4% merit. The board had asked that I return back with just the 4% merit for the individuals who have not received raises separate from a promotion in 2023. So you see that kind of broken up amongst the different departments. You also asked that I bring back bonuses. So what we're recommending is a bonus structure based on annual salaries. So this is the current annual salary that these employees make. So 5% for department heads, 4% for full-time employees, 3% for part-time employees, 2% for employees who started with us within the last 90 days. So I won't go through all the numbers here, but what you'll see is certain departments have a salary increase because those are the ones who would be eligible under the merit salary. And then each department has some sort of bonus listed. That bonus is a one-time bonus, and the salary increases are what the amounts here is what would be needed to cover the next 9 pay periods through the end of the year. Now, getting into department specific, we already talked to you about the need to increase Boulder County Sheriff coverage by $58,760 to cover the support that they are currently providing us. One change is we had previously had 6,000 for background checks. We increased that to 8,200 because Marshall Feinlevin had noted that we weren't including psych and poly in that. So we did an adjustment there. We do not feel that any changes to salaries are needed right now for this current budget. Based on the savings that we have and the number of officers we will likely be able to onboard successfully in 2022, we think we have enough money in savings to be able to still pay what the increases are that are listed, but not have to increase the salary budget at this time.
And sorry, Miranda, just a quick question on the Boulder County one. Is that after I sent the email with the increase for September and October?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is in addition to what's already been budgeted for. Visitor Center, we'd already talked about needing to add $2,750 for donations. And then also the prize for resale, increasing that by $25,000. Community Center, we did a slight increase to $43,000 because there was a hot water heater issue. Dawn, if you're there, for building improvements, we're asking for $43,000, but Dawn may have to adjust. We found out tonight that there were some more urgent needs that we need to do related to exit lighting. And so Dawn was able to do some work on the grease trap to probably get it in a place where we could budget for it in 2023, but could use this $43,000 for other maintenance needs that may not be what's listed here. Dawn, do you want to?
Would that come out of the general fund?
It would come. No, they have their own
It
community
would
center.
come out of the community center fund. Okay, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, Dawn, did I get that correct though? Am I missing anything?
That you are correct. We were able to successfully navigate our grease trap and get it properly functioning. And so that need has become less urgent. We are going to monitor it extremely closely to make sure we maintain that. However, today we had a fire inspection and we have a need to replace our emergency lighting. So about half of the emergency lights that come on when there's a power failure, and we do have a generator, but they're still necessary. About half of those were not working properly. We've replaced bulbs, we've replaced batteries, but they're the original ones from the remodels. They're roughly 15 years old. They've lived their life, and to have half of them not working properly, it doesn't make sense to do the stopgap. We've got 30 days to correct that with the fire department, and that's a significant expense. I've been texting with the electrician since Andrew did the inspection, and roughly $4,000 to run those, and they are hardwired. So it requires, we have 31 units, and we need an electrician to remove the old and put the new ones in. Also, the current ones are not, none of them are LED. They're all the old lights. So we would replace them with modern LED technology.
Thanks, Dawn. So building maintenance needs. Well, we just wanted to offer clarification because we did highlight specifically what they would be for, but I think Dawn's needs are greater. And so we'd like to be able to just give her the funds to be able to make the needed improvements that are in this building.
Yeah, that's a health and safety concern. That's why it's so urgent.
Yep. Thanks, Dawn.
And I'm reading this accurately, sorry, just to make sure, that we had initially budgeted an $8,000 surplus in assets for the community center, and now it would be a $45,000 negative. I'm reading that correctly?
Yes.
Got it. Thanks.
We talked about legal. So legal expenses, we are increasing to cover current and future costs. Public Works, we did remove dust mitigation and asphalt from this, and Emmett is here, and he is aware of that, but obviously here to answer questions. Otherwise, we kept in the $3,500 for trails, for sidewalk repairs, and then the ORC services. Some reallocations of funds. We had $50,000 set aside for I&I repairs. Well, we do want to do some jetting, and I don't have this in here. We wanted to jet the service lines. We also have some significant issues at Headworks that we need to work on a rebuild, approximately $20,000 worth, and we had to buy $10,000 in sand. It's a very special kind of sand that is needed for our sand filters. So we'd like to be able to use that I&I repair fund to be able to offset those expenses. And then in streets, Emmett, they had been allocated for a new Ford Lightning. Emmett called. We are 152nd in line, and there were only 6 trucks available. So it'll be a minute. So therefore, Emmett would like to reallocate these funds to buy another plow truck. Obviously, we're here to talk about this today. We'd originally sent a public hearing for September 6th. However, we do need time to work with Rita, who's out of town right now, on a resolution. So on September 6th, we are going to ask that you consider doing a motion to continue the public hearing to September 20th to allow us a little bit more time to do some things on that resolution that we weren't able to complete prior to Rita going on a well-deserved vacation. So you can't make that decision tonight. It's something we'd have to do on the 6th, but I'd like to just prep you all that that is our request of you. And we are open for questions and comments.
Okay, so we're at 1.167 million. You've got some expenses still to reel in. How much more do you think that we're looking at?
So we don't have any expenses to reel in. We just need to realign the budget or the resolution language. This is what we're proposing. You
Yep.
consider
Okay,
without any other changes.
good. Board?
I have some questions, comments. For Marshall Feinlovin, what's poly? A poly evaluation with the psych?
Poly is a polygraph.
Polygraph, thank you. And for Miranda, what's I&I repairs?
Inflow and infiltration and inflow and infiltration.
Okay, thank you. So what's the process for the supplemental budget? I'm wondering when the funds are available after we continue the public hearing to September 20th, then what happens?
Then if you approved it on September 20th, that resolution would go into effect. It's not like an ordinance where there's like 30 days. It would go into effect that would allow staff to move forward on their respective projects.
Okay.
And also for us to process those bonuses and the raises.
Okay. But bonuses are given when? End of year?
We would give them as soon as they were approved. We do typically do an end of year holiday bonus. Obviously this is a much higher bonus than we typically do at holiday. So we're asking for this instead, and I think for us, we really want to acknowledge all the hard work of these staff and not wait 4 more months to do that.
Okay, and there seems to be an urgency with the bonus and salary, and I don't think I've been in the loop on what is going on with staff, because you have gone through performance reviews and merit increases and
Those happened at the end of the year. It was 6%. It was 2% cost of living, 4% merit. Majority of staff received their merits already, and that would have happened effective January 2022. I think the urgency comes from, we need to acknowledge these staff members. These staff members are the ones who are doing the work day in and day out and should be acknowledged. We did that for quite a few staff members by giving them raises within the funding we had available. But there are quite a few departments that didn't have the excess finances from being short-staffed and therefore would never see any sort of mid-year raise. And so for me, it's really important to acknowledge and honor that hard work through both a bonus and through those increases for those who were not eligible.
Okay, so there were mid-year raises already?
Correct.
Okay.
For primarily public works, so streets, parks, and utilities, and police department, but administration, community center, visitor center, and some representatives from public works did not receive up to 4% increase.
Okay, and then I have a question for Rita. Is Rita on?
No, Rita's not on vacation.
Okay. I'm sure you can answer it, though. At the last meeting, she said that our sales tax revenue was, the budget was actually 12% under what we actually have. Or we have, our sales revenue is 12% more than what we budgeted. So I'm looking at the draft 2022 supplemental budget, the first line item, sales tax under revenue for general fund. It has $1,009,292. If I add 12% to that, that's $121,150. It's $1,211,504. Is that correct?
I can't comment on that, unfortunately. I can ask Rita, since we'll bring this back to you on September 6th anyways, to adjust that figure based on what she has indicated in her staff reports. But I can't speak to that unfortunately, tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important for everyone to know that this is an increase in budget, not increase in actuals or a decrease in actuals. That's going to be done, later on. We don't actually have all that information yet. So we're not allowed to spend money that wasn't budgeted for, right, legally. So that's why we're doing the supplemental. And in that sense, the 4% increase for employees, for town staff who didn't get an increase earlier this year, I think is really important as an equity concern and a retention concern among staff, right? Because there wasn't enough in the budget to give everybody what some people got, right? So we need to rectify that in this supplemental. So it's really correcting, an equity issue, I think, rather than finding excuses to pay people more money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from Miranda on the reasoning behind it. Thank you.
At least for me, that's the reason why I would vote in favor of it, personally.
Okay.
What else did we have?
This is Tanya. I have a question for Emmett. If you get another plow truck, do you have the staff to run it? Because I've been hearing a lot about the department being understaffed. What is the urgency for the new truck? Is the old one broken? Not good, old. I just don't want a truck just sitting in a parking lot if you don't have people to run it.
Yeah, well, as of recently, I have another CDL driver, which brings us to a total of 2 CDL drivers, and we only have one reliable plow truck that requires a CDL, and the rest is heavy equipment, which is not as efficient as the plow truck. So I'm thinking, rather than pursuing this F-150 Lightning, which will be a slow process, I don't know how long it will take, I think an additional plow truck would serve the community better, and it'd be money more well spent.
Great. Thank you very much. So it will be used. You have people to run it. You just don't have a proper truck. This would be an improvement over your current truck.
Yes, that's correct. We only have one reliable plow truck, but now we have 2 qualified operators.
Perfect. I like that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I do have a follow-up on that. Do we have unreliable plow trucks that we can get rid of?
Definitely.
Yeah. Because
And I do want to say that they actually have sold some vehicles.
Great.
Both police department and Public Works has sold vehicles. It's I think those are things too we need to allocate as the years move on, is making sure when we sell the vehicles we can actually use the funds, because similar to donations, that just sits.
Yeah, so if there are vehicles that we should be ditching, like, it makes it much easier for me to say, yeah, buy a new plow truck if we're getting rid of 2 derelict trucks that have been parked in a lot for a decade.
Yeah, we definitely have unreliable equipment that I would like to put out of service. Yeah, we have a Mack that's over 30 years old. It's totally worn out, in a state of neglect, and is no longer worth our attention. So, yeah, it's for these reasons I'd like to just pursue another reliable plow truck.
Yeah.
I think it'd make our operations a lot more efficient.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I'll trade you one new plow truck for an old Mack.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah. Give it to NPR or something.
I'll trade you for Lightning.
I have another question for Miranda. On the attachments, there's 3 different job descriptions. So am I correct in understanding that Peter's title would change from administrative support manager to public relations manager?
Yes, thank you. I should have added that under the staff salary. So we did include some job descriptions for you. Peter, so Peter wouldn't necessarily change this year. And of course, under the Equal Pay Act, we'd need to open it up to everyone. But what we're proposing is we'd like to hire an administrative assistant so that Peter can start to transition and take on more of the tasks that he has been working on. I think it's hard. I mean, he's done an incredible job doing the front desk plus everything else he does, but he has the capability to, I think, do more when it comes to public relations and public outreach. And so we've been talking a bit about what we'd like to do in 2023 is propose the funding of this kind of public relations manager type position, but already have had the administrative assistant in potentially this year so that we can start to free Peter up as he works on those tasks more and more.
So maybe I didn't fully understand it from the packet then. So let me phrase it in this way. Would we be losing the administrative support manager in favor of splitting it into two positions, one public relations manager, one administrative assistant?
Correct.
Okay.
And then like that public relations manager would take the visitor center oversight with them, but we would dissolve that administrative support manager position.
Okay. That's helpful because I thought we were going to try to retain all three positions, and that did not seem particularly efficient to me.
I just wanted to show you what Peter's current job description is, what the administrative assistant job description is. So you can see there's some overlap and what we're starting to propose as this public relations manager. But what we're recommending is keeping Peter in that administrative support manager through the remainder of this year and bringing that brand new position as a part of the 2023 budget versus trying to do it under the supplemental. So all you'd be adding in now and all we're asking for now is an administrative assistant. And this is in addition to that billing support specialist, but we did identify at our last meeting that we could fund that position solely with the savings from Kat's absence, and we could do so this year under utilities covering the cost of that salary for this year only.
So no supplemental is needed for this year for the billing support specialist.
But in the salaries, what you're seeing there, that salaries increase under admin actually does include an administrative assistant.
Yes.
That we are
Yeah,
proposing.
I saw that. And that's like 17,000 for the year. Is that right? Sorry.
But that also includes myself, Rita, Peter in the mixture, and Christy. There's 4 of us that come out of that admin finance combo. And then this would be a 5th person to add into that, but it does come out of that 17,000.
Right.
We just haven't split it up to tell you exactly how much is going to which person.
It's the hardest sell for me right now.
Sure.
Is the admin assistant for this year. I mean, my temptation is to say we should wait until next year's budget to talk about splitting those positions and getting that all locked down. That's my temptation. I mean, that's my gut reaction.
Well, what is the urgency, Miranda? I mean, we're talking about 2 months from now.
So I think that the reason we're asking for it now is obviously recognizing that Peter is spread incredibly thin. And so much of that is due to those day-to-day operations. He has taken on a lot of tasks for every board and commission and the community, and everyone turns to him for a lot of their public relation needs. And then he spends his time, of course, doing the front desk duties, but he would be, I think, a lot more efficient if we were able to break up that part-time, the front desk duty and free him up to really support all of our boards and commissions and our desire to push out information about the projects we're working on. He kind of does that as just a sliver of his time. And again, I think does an amazing job, but he is definitely capable of doing a lot more to support all the boards, the communities, and the departments.
And Macy takes on more on the front desk?
No, so that's the administrative assistant that we're recommending hiring. This doesn't impact Macy at all.
So it is an extra, it is an extra employee.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you said it wasn't. That's
no. I just said it wasn't 2 extra. I was reading it as 2 extra.
Okay, I always saw it as that we're hiring one more person. I got you, and then I thought we weren't, and then I got really confused. So I get it. 2 months is a long time to keep somebody overworked.
Yeah.
So
for me, it's less.
I mean, I'm okay with all of this. Really, I'm glad to clarify it for everybody else and for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I totaled the salary increases for all staff, less the bonuses, and it comes out to $167,000 per year. However, if Rita has been saying we're our sales tax revenue is actually 12% more than what's budgeted, and that's 112,000. So the difference between the total of the salary increases and the increase in sales tax revenue, the 12%, is 52,000, which would be the ongoing recurring cost for the town staff salary. So I'm hoping to get that correction from Rita, and then I feel pretty good about all these increases.
Oh, and it's also important to note that we budget for an increase as well, right? So we conservatively budget for an increase already year on year. And so this is 12% in addition to the already budgeted increase. So the hard numbers will be easily managed by the increase next year in this configuration of the supplemental budget. Maybe less so the last configuration, but this one I think is easily managed by projected increases.
Yeah, so it's a difference of 52,000, which we could, as Miranda said, you know, if we don't, if we put tax increase measures on the ballot in November and they don't pass, we'll find other ways to fund these salary increases. Will, you know, decrease funding for projects.
Yes, and also you need to do a motion to extend if you want to keep having.
I motion to extend to 10:30.
Second.
Call the vote, please.
Trustee Blakemore.
Here.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Mahold.
Yes.
And Trustee Corvalon.
Yes, but let's be succinct.
Thank you.
So I think maybe one thing I just want to add on, you know, and I think you were starting to go there, Trustee Coombs Ismail, obviously it's not specific to Peter, but I think it's just recognizing the desires of this community have always been related to public outreach, public engagement, that community relations, that public relations. As department heads, I think we all struggle sometimes always pushing the information out, and that's where Peter has played a huge role in taking our projects, taking our pictures, taking our stuff, and really getting it out there. I mean, like, look what's happening. And so I think it just helps to bridge a gap that exists right now, and why this position we think is so vital is it seems like year after year the board's saying you need to have better community relations. But we also need to have dedicated people to do that, because asking a department head to take on that extra level, I think, is a lot. And so if you had a central person who could absorb the work that everyone's doing and help to package it up and deliver it to the public, that would really go a long way. And I think strengthening that community relationship.
Good. Board, anything else before we close this one up? It sounds, just to recap, we're looking at revisiting this to the December 6th and then finalizing it the following meeting.
Correct. And so I think what we would be bringing back to you is the revenue information. I guess it would be good to maybe know where we land on this position, since it is maybe the one piece that we're not quite sure on, and whether we need to remove it from the administrative salary line item or if we are good to continue forward with it.
And did you already say how much that was for the 3 months in?
It's $22 an hour at full time. It's going to take us probably 30 days to.
Is it full-time or 30 hours a week?
It should be full time. And if it
Thought-
says 30, that's an old job description.
Okay.
It was a full-time position because part-times are very hard to recruit for. So we do want to have it full-time.
Got it.
And I'm sorry, $20 an hour full-time. And then it takes us about 30 days to probably bring someone on board. So we'd be looking at, if we say we started September, we'd probably be looking to pay the person for 2.5 months in 2022.
There's some additional costs that go along with that.
Right. There are employer's tax costs, and I am not the person to give those to you. But Rita could break that down. Again, what those figures are, we give you just lump sums for all the people in those different departments.
So we're looking at, just for the salary, $10,560 for 3 months, $22 full time.
Okay. So you need guidance on where we stand individually with splitting the job?
Yeah, I think just in general, like, do you support, I think it's kind of a couple questions. Do you support the salary as proposed, being the 4% merit for the ones who haven't received it and the bonus? Do you support the projects? And then do you also support this new staff position that we're proposing. I think those are the three things we need to know.
From my standpoint, yes, yes, and yes, but do I have a disagreement?
Well, what I was starting to say was that it's less the public relations manager position that I'm concerned about job description wise, and more the administrative assistant.
Okay.
Like the job description doesn't feel like enough work to me, and
Okay.
I might be completely off base on that, and I recognize that, and I think I'll err on the side of trusting town staff on this, but it does.
Let me ask you, Miranda. Oh, sorry to interrupt, Eric.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, it feels like to me like that this role, it like receiving mail as a bullet item is not really much of anything, right? Like it's not that intensive, and so to have a whole position, I'm just not feeling like it's that robust.
So we've had a full-time administrative assistant now for years, and actually Peter is on the line. Peter, I'd love to know, we hired Peter as an administrative assistant.
Right,
And
but he's
then
doing so much more.
Well, then we promoted him to administrative support manager, and it's under that realm that then he took on all
Got
these, he of course always did above and beyond because that's who he is.
Right.
But then he took on these additional roles under that. But Peter, as the administrative assistant and that job only, how do you feel about that being full-time? Peter and I did talk a little bit about part-time. We just worry it's really hard to recruit for part-time.
Understood.
But Peter, are you still there? We can't hear you, but I saw you came off mute. Okay.
I mean, could this admin assistant serve as more of a point of contact for everyone? I mean,
Yes.
including boards and commissions and elected and appointed officials. Like, could that be more of the role? Like, so much gets funneled through the town administrator, so much gets funneled through the town clerk. I feel like it would be nice if there was somebody else that was dealing with these more day-to-day responses. And maybe that could be this role.
Yeah.
That this was just the person you go to. So you don't have to bother, people who are dealing with I&I issues up at the plant, all the time, like with hey, where's my bill? Like that, that it becomes more formalized, that becomes the point of contact, and that we can also, as elected and appointed officials, reach out to this person and know that that is their job and not feel bad reaching out to them. Because honestly, I feel bad reaching out to town staff right now. And I don't think that that's a healthy position for us to be in. So if we can create a position that alleviates that, I think I would be much more on board.
Absolutely. And I think I can work with Peter on that. Christy Ruman was also our administrative assistant at one point in time in his transition. So I think between the two of them, they would be able to really evaluate what is that job, what more could be added without reaching a point of overload.
Yeah.
It is a hub. People are coming and going. Tom sat with me at the front desk, and I think we had like 10 visitors in 30 minutes. It's definitely a rolling door. And I think that's the one thing about the administrative assistant is they are getting interrupted 20, 30 times a day with a variety of different things. And so that often takes away time. But Peter, are you there?
My suggestion is
Yeah.
try it sometime.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Peter's here. Yes.
Hey.
You talked about your administrative assistant when we first hired you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think starting and be a full-time thing, it's kind of as I experienced going through it, there is definitely room for other tasks. And I think especially right now, there's a lot of things that just have been kind of pushed to the back. There's a lot of old files that need to be taken care of, a lot of things that are just kind of all over the place that could be included in the job description that I don't think are there now. Just going over it a few nights ago, I know that it definitely needs some updating.
So like digitization of records and things like
Yeah.
that would be on this job description as well. And
Yep.
yeah.
Cynthia and I were just talking about that today. Yes, I do think we would be happy to, if there's still support, to amend that job description and then bring it back to you next week.
That is what I would really like to see personally. I don't know how anybody else.
I'm good with amending.
Okay. Do we need further discussion?
I just would love to hear from Trustee Corvalon, just to, I think I did, but just to confirm.
Yeah, amendment is fine.
Okay.
And otherwise, I'm kind of in support of what you're asking with the budget supplemental.
So we'll come back to you for further discussion, but it'll actually come back to you as an action item because you'll need to make that motion to continue this to the 20th. We'll clarify all that in the aim.
Thanks.
Understood.
And thanks to town staff for staying up past your bedtime.
Yeah.
I know this is your 6 a.m. crew here, so they roll early.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Only one more item.
Yeah.
We'll wait. Sorry. Did we do public comment on that supplement?
No, you're right. We did not do public comment.
Do we need to do?
Yes.
Is there anybody who wants to speak on the supplemental budget?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay. Hearing none, we go on to 6.4, the draft ballot language. Miranda?
All right. So we, thanks to Attorney Madsen, who helped to draft some resolution language, there may be some additional words that need to be tweaked, but in general, we want your feedback on what's being proposed here. As a reminder, the board agreed on a 1% sales tax, a 5% special marijuana tax. And in addition, we have added before you, based on Trustee Corvalon and Mayor Pro Tem Mahold's recommendation to bring this forward, changing that occupational tax from $2 per night per room to $4 per room, regardless of how many rooms are occupied. Just kind of a flat, so if a 4-bedroom home, you're going to charge $4 for all 4 rooms. So increasing that and also changing the way in which it was calculated. So this is another one that is new to you for consideration. On what if you're interested in adding this to the ballot language for occupational tax. And Attorney Madsen, go ahead.
This is Tanya. I just kind of wanted to give my reasoning for wanting to add this.
Please.
Is because I'm pretty sure any kind of fee increase requires a election. Is that correct? Like we can't just do that.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't want to have a special election for something like this. The next election would be in 2 years from April or whatever. And, or I guess a year and a half from now. And I was thinking, we're looking for more funding. I'm from talking to people, a lot of people want more fees on short-term rentals. It doesn't seem super controversial unless it's people who run them. I'm getting a little bit of back on the sales tax, like it might not pass from the amount of people I've spoken to. And I just wanted to kind of have something else on the ballot to kind of bring in a little more money for the town. And I just feel like it's something that gets passed on to the consumer, and it's not that big of a deal, I don't think. Kind of like the marijuana tax, it gets passed on. It's a luxury sort of situation, in my opinion, and I don't want to wait a year and a half to put this back on the ballot. I know we want to rehash some of our regulations for short-term rentals, and that was our reason for not putting it on the initial ballot, because we're like, we're going to talk about this later, but I'm like, well, really feasibly, when is this? Now is the time, we need money now. And so that was my reasoning for it.
So I have a few comments and questions. I guess I'll start with the short-term rental tax. So I'm wondering, I'd like to see some comparison taxes. I'd like to see Boulder County and other towns and cities in Boulder County, what they charge for short-term rental tax. We're currently charging $2 per room per night. Is 4 in the ballpark of what's being charged in neighboring cities and towns in the county? For marijuana, I'm wondering what the current tax breakdown is. When I talked to the dispensaries, they showed me that they were about at 20% total. They showed me a sticker on one of their products. I know that 15% of that goes to the state, and I'm wondering about the other 5%. And then my other question with marijuana is, do the dispensaries pay the 4% town sales tax? So I feel I need to have that information in order to, decide if the measure is to have my support for the measure. And then on the sales tax verbiage, what are the personnel to support emergency public safety responders? Do you know what that is, Miranda? Or maybe...
So Attorney Madsen is on, and I think we're just, so Attorney Madsen, do you want to take some of those? I was going to look into the occupational tax, so with other cities, because I know we did that when we proposed the first one. Sorry,
Right.
Jenna.
All right. So can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I can answer a lot of these questions related to comparison of other municipalities in Boulder County on the lodging tax. One of the things that will be difficult about that, and we've talked about this a lot, is that because Nederland is a statutory town, the lodging occupation tax, the recommendation, or the way that it's been approved by the Colorado courts is that it's a dollar amount per night or per day. So instead of a percentage based, it's a dollar amount figure. Counties have just been given the ability to levy a lodging tax. So that is something that unincorporated counties will be putting on ballots soon. And then when you're looking at other municipalities within Boulder County, a lot of them are home rule. And so they will be charging a percentage tax. So it's not going to be an apples to apples comparison for that. As to the marijuana tax, marijuana, the retail products or retail marijuana sales tax is assessed on retail marijuana sales. So they would be assessed at a regular sales tax rate. And then they are assessed the 15% tax by the state, of which the town receives, the total amount that is collected in Nederland, the town receives 10% of that tax. Does that make sense on that?
Yeah, currently we receive 10% of the marijuana recreation dispensary tax.
Right. Of that 15% that goes to the state, we receive 10%. And it's not actually it's 10% of the amount that's collected.
Okay, 10% of 15% plus 4% retail sales tax.
Right. But then they would also be charged state sales tax and Boulder County tax. Sales tax.
Okay, thank you for that. And
Karen, did you receive the work session information that compared Nederland to other communities as far as some charging 10%, some charging 5%, some charging 0%? Did you get that information?
Yes. So my next question for Attorney Madsen is in the measure for the sales tax increase, the fund revenues will be used for police officers, personnel to support emergency public safety responders. Can you explain what that is?
Well, for town staff, that could be the person that we have now that is in charge of the court services, Troy, and in charge of other support staff for law enforcement.
Oh, okay, thanks. I think, I think we should include equipment for the police department. I know that they have needed to upgrade their vehicles. They need computers on their vehicles. Maybe training is needed. So if this tax increase measure is to support the police department, I'm wondering if we shouldn't include those sorts of things as well. And
that language could definitely be added. Yes.
okay, thanks. And then my major issue with the ballot issues is I think we need more specific figures for the police department budget, salaries, equipment, training, and town personnel costs for 2023 and beyond. I'm looking at the recurring costs from the supplemental budget, the town staff salaries, plus the additional person to do the support position. It's $167,000 per year. If we've under budgeted our sales tax by $112,000, that's $52,000 ongoing recurring cost for town staff salaries. What additional, until we have a marshal, I'm wondering what the additional cost is for the police department above and beyond what the supplemental budget is. Do we really need $675,000? I think that was the amount, the maximum amount that we would receive from the sales tax increase. Or are we looking at more like maybe $150,000? So it's difficult for me to support these measures without having more specific numbers on what the police department budget and town personnel costs will be for 2023 and beyond. And that's all I have.
Okay. Bear in mind, we have a September 7th deadline to have things finished. We're going to meet again on the 2nd, but we're rapidly running out of time. It sounds like, but the language is largely put to bed. Did we have, if you agree in principle, Karen, is there anything in the language that would need to change or that you want clarification on to make it tighter before it goes to ballot?
Oh, I think the amount that we're seeking, I'm not sure about because I don't know what our needs are in 2023 and beyond. So I don't know if it's 1%.
Well,
But I think, it's.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's just that the problem is that we don't have an established police department. We don't have a building for them. We don't have established departments even in the sense of public works. We have very small departments that that obviously are not able to keep up with so many of the issues that we have. I think that the town needs more revenue to operate as a town fundamentally. And if we want to expand any of our services or even achieve some of the, some solutions to the ongoing problems that we have, there's no way to do it without more budget, right? And that 625,000 is kind of a ballpark arbitrary figure. It's reasonably in the lane of where we might end up. But remember, that's also going to increase year on year. That 1% is not going to be 625 in 2024. It's going to be much more than that. So it opens up a lot of opportunities for town. So I think that's really what we're trying to do, is open up opportunities for us to do all the projects that our residents want us to do, to establish our police department and retain a local police force in the long term, not just for next year's budget, right? And I think that that's really the key, is that this really isn't about a specific number for achieving a specific goal for next year. This is about putting the town in a more appropriate financial position for the long term.
It's
Yep.
also about getting a sentiment of the town on what they're willing to pay.
That's
for.
exactly right. And,
Yeah.
and the fact that, I mean, that's one thing about Taper that isn't terrible is that you can go to, in a small community like this one, you can go to the people of the town and say, well, what are you willing to pay for? What kind of town government should this look like? Because there's a certain point where we're not able to fulfill the requests of the community, right? As a government. And if the town doesn't vote to increase these revenues, then it also gives us our mandate. It says to us, reduce services. You can't do it all. We don't want you to do it all because we're not willing to pay for it. Do what you can do within the limited funding that we're offering you. And so that's really what this conversation, I think, is truly about. It's not, I understand where you're coming from, Trustee Blake. It would be great to have more specifics on numbers, but I just don't think it's actually possible to drill down on the actual need, because the need is the target is so hard it's moving all the time. It's so hard to find. And where we want to get to in the future is going to depend on so many factors that are out of our control. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. We have our revenue is like 4 million per year, and we spend that all on operations. So we really have no funding available to increase the operations. So one other thing that I wanted to say was I talked to 4 of the businesses in town, for the owners. 2 were in support of a 1% sales tax. The other 2 that I spoke to were more ambivalent, and they're both owners of breweries in town. And the way that breweries price their beverages and their food is they round up to the nearest to the dollar amount. And so what they'll be doing is they'll be losing 1% in revenue because they're not going to increase their products by $1. So they will have to they'll have to just take that, and they won't be able to charge their customers that 1% sales tax increase.
Okay. Tanya, anything you have to say or any questions on this?
I just want to, I know we got to wrap this up. We got 5 minutes. I want to say the main motivation for all of this was because we had the marshal Fine-Loving come in and tell us that we needed about this much more, $500,000-$600,000 more to just run a police department. So we were like, okay. And then it became clear that we're short staffed, underfunded everywhere. And that's where these numbers are coming from. And I think we put it out to the voters. I'm in support of this, how it is, all 3 initiatives, and let them decide, right? If the breweries don't, if their employees say no, or people who, I don't know what to tell you. It's you vote yes, you vote no. I don't always vote yes for tax increases myself. I don't know how I'm personally going to vote on this. But I think it's important we put it out to the voters and find out how much are they willing to support our town? How much do they want us to increase services? And how much do they want us to create those dream visions that we always hear people talking about the performance space, about the dog park, about everything, the roads. And yes, it would be great if we could do that within our current budget, but apparently we cannot. So this is where we stand. I say, let's put it up there, bring it to us in the next meeting. Let's vote yes or no on an action item. Thanks.
So I just want to say, as far as the capital improvements are concerned, there's many grants available out there at the federal level, at the state level, and other ways. But we do need to have the matching funds for that. And
right, we can't run our town on grants, and we have to hire a grant. Well, we do have a grant writer, and I actually do want to talk about that in a different meeting and find out how that's been working for this year.
Good. Okay, anything else we need to say on this?
Just that if anyone's listening out there, that I just really want to reinforce at least my perspective on what this means for our community, and that this is not about achieving necessarily a specific numerical goal just for next year, just because we are in a crisis with the police department. But this is about whether or not we want to be able to sustain these kinds of local services that are democratically managed by our community, by the residents of the town, and by the folks who participate in our town, who are just outside of the borders. So this is really kind of a philosophical question that's going to come on the ballot, and I hope that folks answer it in the way that makes most sense to them. But I just wanted to be clear what it means, whichever way you answer.
So if we had more specifics on what the funds would be used for, it'd be a lot easier to explain to the voters, to write those statements for the measures. So,
This would go on the ballot in November.
Mhm.
I think it's pretty clear we will have that data prior to the election to explain to people.
But you won't be able to explain anything to people. Just a reminder, Board of
Can
Trustees.
you read the sales tax one, how it's written right now? The big one, the sales tax one. We already
I
know
read
the
it?
short. Yeah, how is it going to be on the ballot the way you have it right now?
Well, it'll be shall Town of Netherlands taxes be increased by 625,000 annually, and goes on starting January 2023, and by such amounts as are raised annually thereafter, by the imposition of an additional 1% sales tax, such that town sales tax rates increases from 4% to 5%, with revenues from such tax increase being used for police officers to ensure safety of officers and improve emergency response, personnel to support emergency public safety responders, personnel to support other town services, and or other lawful municipal purposes.
All right, that sounds great to me. Thank you.
Okay, we're at T-minus 2 minutes.
And you do have public comment, so you may want to consider a motion to extend, because I don't want to cut.
Motion to extend to 10:45.
Take the vote.
Do you have a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore. Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Mahone.
Yes.
And Trustee Corvalon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean that the sales tax measure talks about paying personnel. And so we're currently paying personnel, and why do we need more money to pay personnel? So, I mean, that's the kind of thing I think a voter will want to know.
I think because we have to pay them more.
We need to pay them more, 625,000 more per year. So, and maybe we should add the equipment in there for the police department. I'm wondering for the marijuana tax, if we want to earmark those funds. They're currently not earmarked in the measure.
Anybody have a comment?
I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Sorry, I just needed to pull it up. I need to see it in front of me. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the the marijuana one, you mean? And right now it's just a general tax. I mean, I'm personally in favor of it being general. To me, this is something that should have been done a long time ago. It has nothing to do with our current crisis. I think this is revenue the town should be collecting because it's an opportunity we should be passing up. That's my position on that one. So I'm fine with that one being general.
I mean, if we should earmark it, give it to Parks and Recs. I mean, they could definitely use the money, and we have a lot of projects in that realm. If you think that's better,
It's not a terrible idea.
So I mean, it's going to be like 120,000 maybe or something if we're on a good year extra. I mean, you guys could tear that up. So do that if you think that will help.
Or maybe we could do the same thing that we did before. Could we give examples of what it could be spent on and then say another lawful municipal services?
Well, yeah, you got to have that just in case it just, you know, just in case, I think.
Yeah, because it's a Tabor issue, like if you tie up the money and then you can't spend it because
Yeah,
it's
give it back.
because
and
it's
it's a check
earmarked for something
$50.
so specific that then that thing no longer exists, then you're
Well,
really in a bind.
When we did the occupational tax for the short-term rentals at $2, we did talk about having that and other municipal services, but we decided not to put that in and just do it specifically for the police department and Housing and Human Services, because we felt that the voters would be more accepting of that.
Yeah.
And the Boulder County transportation sales tax extension is specifically to fund transportation.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, and transportation projects that are in their master transportation plan. So generally, I think voters want to know where this money is going to and why. You know, so they feel, you know, that it's a worthwhile expenditure.
Sure. I mean, and then there's the other side of things where voters also come to the board and say, hey, I want you to fix this problem I took a picture of. And if we say, well, you didn't, you require that it all be dedicated to, you know, housing or whatever it might be, so we can't use the money to fix your road then, right? See, this is the problem, like,
Yeah.
this tension
So,
is
Aaron,
constantly
where would
exists.
you want the money to go to? What would be the earmark in your mind? Because let's just wrap this up, because we really do need to wrap this up.
I think parks is fine. Parks and
Fine, let's
recreation
do that, guys.
services.
Can we just, I don't even care anymore. I mean, like, we need the money. The Parks Department will definitely use it. We have the rink part of it. Or not. Tom, come on, man. What do you want to, let's vote.
I leave it for general purposes. I agree with Eric. I don't think we need to necessarily,
Fine, I agree with you guys too. So,
and I agree with, especially with the wrap it up part.
we have another situation later, so.
Okay, are we, Miranda, do you have the guidance you need?
Well, I actually turned to Attorney Madsen. So I think the big question, are we bringing all, it sounds like we're still bringing all three back to you next week.
All three.
Okay.
All three as a discussion or as an action?
It needs to be action on Tuesday.
Okay, good.
Tuesday is the 2nd, and then the deadline is the 7th.
Right,
Okay.
Tuesday's the 6th. So we're doing it on the day before. That has to be done.
Literally, okay.
Literally, yeah.
And one thing I just want to point out to you is that the occupation tax increase from $2 to $4 a night, the language is still the same. So the money is earmarked to Health and Human Services and law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, and currently it's 99% to Health and Human, I think. We may
Right,
want
and
to
you
change that at a different point, but just FYI.
Yeah.
And then I also just want to add, I mean, your average 4-bedroom home is going to go for $300 a night. So I do not think somebody paying an extra $8 a night is going to make or break anything. And it will give us a little more money in case some of these other initiatives fail. And that's my last plug for it.
Okay.
Oh, I did have one more question for Miranda. So I guess we're, for the sales tax, the 1% sales tax, how will that money be distributed? Will we have a committee like we do for the housing, for the short-term rental tax that decides how the money will be spent? Or do we need to have that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not, I haven't been here for how we've handled an increase of 4. Attorney Madsen, do you know what's typical, or is that something kind of administratively the finance team distributes based on what the language says?
It's part of the budgeting process, and it would be part of finance team. I mean, so the language for the sales tax does have other municipal services, which is a catch-all. So you're not necessarily needing to create a fund to house that money.
So it all goes into the general fund, is that right?
Yeah, but then there would need to be some accounting in terms of to make, where the money is going. But again, it does have the catch-all, so it could be used for other expenditures and appropriations.
Okay, and marijuana tax the same. It would go into the general fund.
Yes, unless it was all for Parks and Rec.
Did we decide that? I think I heard,
Can we have a Parks and Rec version for next week? Is that possible? And then we
Yes,
can
I will
vote
do. I will do a separate one that's Parks and Rec. I can do an A or a B.
We would just vote on one or the other.
Yeah, and then we can just
Yeah.
vote on it next week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it being in the general fund, but I'm also fine with Parks and Rec.
I think we should actually keep it in the general fund because what we need to fund, most importantly, are the increases in salaries for town staff and for the police department. And if the sales tax increase does not pass, we can use the marijuana and the marijuana tax.
Yeah, I
increase
think
as
that
fast.
we can fight these kind of allocation battles during the budgeting process each year, right? We don't have to do it in the taper ballot language. That's really just for getting it to pass, and that's
Yeah, I think we should keep keep it non-earmarked for the marijuana tax is what I think we should do.
okay.
We're in agreement then?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Public comment.
public comment.
I know Rich had a public comment.
Thanks, Rich, for staying around.
To be brief, I'm Rich Orman, town resident. I'm not, looking at the language, this is really technical. This is not to the merits at all. Looking at the Constitution, the Tabor portion of the Constitution that describes how to put ballot language on for tax increases. And essentially what it says is, shall town of Nederland taxes be increased is the way this Constitution says it. The ordinances that at least were draft ordinances said, shall town of Nederland sales taxes be increased. I think it's unconstitutional to put the word sales in there. It's against the language in Tabor. I think actually if you did that, the town, it might be an invalid ordinance and someone could sue and say you're not allowed to collect that tax. Frankly, I feel so strong about the Constitution, I might sue the town for not complying with that. Even if I agreed with the tax, as a matter of principle, you've got to comply with Tabor. So I would just say, please amend it so that that word sales isn't in there in the two ordinances that it applies.
But then what are we taxing?
Let me just comment here. This does need to be changed. So I am going to make the changes that Mr. Orman is talking about. It does need to be corrected. So it's specific language at the very beginning. It's shall town of Nederland taxes be increased by then the specific amount. And then later on you say it's increase in sales tax.
Okay.
Or
You do
increase
say
in
sales
retail
tax at some
marijuana.
point.
Yes.
It's just the opening sentence we're talking about here.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. No need to sue.
Okay, you guys, this is Tanya. Also, I hate to bring this up in the 11th hour, but do you think we'd have more luck if we just asked for 0.8%? Because you know how people hate to be that close to 10%. That it'd be like 9 point. I'm just throwing it out there. Sorry. I'm just thinking psychologically, you think we'd be able to get people to be more on board with it? Because they think it's a little less, when you buy something for $3.75 instead of $4. Anybody have a feeling on that, or am I just tired?
Well, we're gonna with the 2% or the two Boulder County measures that are each 0.1, and they're not continuation of a tax. The 1% is going to push us over 10% total on sales tax.
If everything wins.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion, but I don't think the 999 strategy is going to make that much difference in whether it gets approved or not.
Okay. I'm just throwing it out there because I think I could live with a little less if I thought it would swing.
Billy has public comment, and I just want to time check, assuming Billy stays within 3 minutes. All
I'll be
right.
done in 1 minute. Only thing
Okay.
I would say, I'm glad, thanks Rich for pointing that out. that personally I think's just putting the marijuana tax out there with nothing on it. I mean, the sales tax might fail. So if the marijuana tax passes, theoretically, we can use that for police or whatever we decide. But so if you don't want to earmark it, yeah, I guess I don't feel strongly. What I would say, just as a little visual thing on the occupancy tax, can you break out, and I see that health and human services programs and activities in law enforcement are, and maybe you should say, in other, well, however you want to do it. I see it's in boldface and a little bit bigger, but can you break it out like a bullet, like you have it for that first one for sales tax? Because then people really see it, I think, a little more. And then I don't know whether you would also say other town expenses or other municipal expenses, but just breaking it out as a bullet, I think is more visually, I get lost in all that word sometimes, and others do too.
Attorney Madsen, correct me if I'm wrong, but our ordinance for occupational tax does state that it would be used for health and human services or police only, correct? I think so.
Well, that's what the ballot measure that passed
Okay.
in whatever year that was, 2019.
Well, that's fine. I would just say
I'm
if
personally
you
fine
bullet
with
it,
that
it's
language.
more clear.
Any other public comment?
Not seeing anything online.
Okay, do we have a motion?
For
About whether we're running up against the end of our clock.
yes, we won't do anything with this
Right.
because it's discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to close out 6.4 then. And motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Call the vote, please.
And Trustee Blakemore? Yes. Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
And, excuse me, and Mayor Pro Tem Mahold?
Yes.
Thank you.
And with that, we close 2 minutes short of our deadline at 10:43. I think we have one more executive item where we need to talk about in executive session. I'd say take a 5-minute break.
So no, you can't.
We've already adjourned.
Yeah, you've adjourned the meeting. You can't
do it.
can't go into executive session.
Okay, then we're done.
All right. So that's that, right? Good night, everybody. Or are we coming back to meet again in 5 minutes?
Tanya, I believe that the meeting has been adjourned.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you so much, Macy.
Of course. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.